It is 3 in the morning, and the world outside is asleep. The house is silent, a landscape of quiet shadows and muffled sounds. But inside your mind, a storm is raging. The presentation you have to give tomorrow loops on an endless cycle of potential failures. An unresolved conversation with a loved one replays with different words, different outcomes, none of them bringing peace. The weight of financial obligations, of health concerns, of the simple, crushing pressure to keep everything together presses down in the darkness. This is not just a random night of sleeplessness. It is a symptom of our time, a quiet epidemic of the restless mind. We spend our waking hours in a state of constant management, a silent, determined war against the chaos of life. We curate our calendars, our careers, our online personas, and our relationships, all in an effort to maintain a sense of control. We believe that if we just plan harder, work smarter, and anticipate every problem, we can build a fortress against uncertainty. But in the deep quiet of the night, when the distractions of the day have fallen away, a profound truth emerges. We are not in control. We are standing against a tide that is far greater than we are, and the exhaustion we feel is not from the burdens of life itself, but from the immense, draining effort of our own resistance. It is the weariness of a soul that is constantly bracing for impact, constantly fighting against the natural, unpredictable flow of what is. But what if there was another way? A path that does not require a stronger shield or a sharper sword. A path that does not ask you to fight harder, but invites you, with gentle compassion, to simply lay down your arms. This is not a path of surrender in the face of defeat, but a path of profound wisdom. It is the ancient road offered by Buddhist philosophy, a road illuminated by a single, powerful concept: acceptance. Not the passive resignation that things are bad and will stay bad, but a courageous, clear-eyed acknowledgement of reality as it is in this very moment. It is the key, not to changing the world around us, but to transforming our experience of it, and in that transformation, finding the quiet, unshakable peace that we so desperately seek, especially in the lonely hours before the dawn. To understand the path to a quiet mind, we must first be willing to look directly at the nature of our disquiet. We must have the courage to sit with our own anxiety, not as an enemy to be vanquished, but as a messenger carrying a vital piece of information about the inner workings of our own consciousness. The sleepless night is not the problem itself. It is merely the symptom, the final, undeniable evidence of a deeper friction that runs through our days. This friction, this pervasive sense of struggle, is the very subject that the Buddha placed at the core of his teachings over 2.5 millennia ago. He offered a diagnosis of the human condition, a framework so elegant and profound that it resonates just as powerfully in our hyper-connected world as it did in the quiet groves of ancient India. This framework begins with what are known as the Four Noble Truths, and they are not commands to be obeyed, but realities to be observed and understood for ourselves. The first truth is the truth of Dukkha. This Pali word is often translated as suffering, but its meaning is far more subtle and encompassing. To hear life is suffering can sound pessimistic, even nihilistic, but this is a misunderstanding of the depth of the diagnosis. Dukkha is not just the searing pain of tragedy, like the loss of a loved one or a debilitating illness. It certainly includes these things, but it also points to something far more common, a baseline level of unsatisfactoriness that hums beneath the surface of our lives. It is the subtle stress of a looming deadline, the flicker of disappointment when a pleasant experience comes to an end, the feeling of being misunderstood, the gnawing sense that something is not quite right, that we are not quite whole. It is the inherent instability of happiness itself. We get the promotion we craved, and for a week we feel elated, but soon the feeling fades, replaced by the pressure of the new role. We have a perfect evening with friends, only to feel a pang of melancholy as it ends, a longing to hold on to that fleeting perfection. This is dukkha, the unavoidable friction that comes from living in a world that is constantly changing, a world that rarely aligns perfectly with our desires. The anxiety that keeps us awake at night is an acute manifestation of dukkha, a concentrated dose of this fundamental unsatisfactoriness. It is the mind's painful recognition that the world is not conforming to its wishes. This leads directly to the second noble truth, which addresses the origin of this dukkha. The Buddha taught that the root cause of our suffering is not the external events of our lives, but our internal reaction to them. The cause is a deep-seated mental habit called tanha, which translates as thirst, craving, or clinging. It is a relentless, driving energy within the mind that is constantly seeking to grasp onto what it finds pleasant, push away what it finds unpleasant, and maintain a solid sense of self. Our anxiety is the direct result of this clinging. We cling to the idea of a secure future, and so we lie awake, worrying about money or our health. We cling to a positive self-image, and so a single piece of criticism can send us into a spiral of self-doubt. We cling to the past, replaying mistakes and wishing we could change what has already been written. The mind, in its state of tanha, is like a clenched fist, desperately trying to hold water. The tighter it squeezes, the more the water escapes, and the more frantic and exhausted it becomes. The source of our sleepless nights is this very clenching, this refusal to open our hand and simply let life flow as it will. To truly understand this distinction between an event and our reaction to it, the Buddha offered a powerful and simple parable, the story of the second arrow. Imagine you are walking through a forest, and suddenly you are struck in the leg by an arrow. The physical sensation is sharp, immediate, and real. This is pain. It is an unavoidable part of life. In our modern world, this first arrow can take many forms: a discouraging email from a superior, an unexpected bill in the mail, a thoughtless comment from a partner, a diagnosis from a doctor. These things happen. They are painful. They are the first arrow. Now, as you lie there, wounded by this first arrow, you have a choice. But the untrained mind, conditioned by habit, almost invariably reaches into its own quiver and shoots a second arrow into the same spot. This second arrow is our reaction. It is the story we tell ourselves about the first arrow. It is the voice that says, "Why me? This is a catastrophe. I can't believe this happened. It's not fair. My career is ruined. My relationship is over. I will never get better." This second arrow is not made of wood and feathers. It is made of thought, of judgment, of resistance, and of fear. The first arrow causes pain. The second arrow causes suffering. The physical wound from the first arrow will eventually heal, but the wound from the second arrow can fester for days, for weeks, for years. It is the second arrow that poisons our minds, that replays the event over and over, that generates the consuming emotions of anger, despair, and anxiety. It is the second arrow, not the first, that keeps us awake at night. The actual event, the first arrow, might have taken only a moment, but our mind can spend hours, even days, firing second, third, and fourth arrows into the original wound. We create entire narratives of disaster. The critical email is no longer just an email. It becomes proof of our incompetence, the beginning of the end of our career. The thoughtless comment is no longer a momentary lapse. It is evidence that we are unloved and unworthy. The silence of the night provides the perfect, undisturbed workshop for the manufacturing of these second arrows. During the day, we can distract ourselves. We can lose ourselves in work, in conversation, in entertainment, in the simple busyness of life. But when the world goes quiet, we are left alone with our own minds, and the habitual tendency to resist reality, to argue with what is, takes center stage. The war is not with the world, it is with the facts of the world. And in that war, we are the only casualty, wounded again and again by the arrows of our own making. Therefore, the path to peace does not lie in trying to create a world where first arrows no longer exist. That is an impossible task. Life will always have its challenges, its pains, its unexpected turns. The true path, the path to ending the suffering that keeps us from our rest, lies in learning not to fire the second arrow. It lies in cultivating the wisdom to differentiate between the clean, unavoidable pain of life and the messy, self-inflicted suffering of our reaction to it. It requires us to see, with absolute clarity, that our anxiety is not an inevitable response to our circumstances, but a learned habit of resistance. It is the mind's futile war against what is. We have now seen that this resistance, this clinging, is the source of our turmoil, but it begs a deeper question. What is the fundamental nature of reality that we are so desperately resisting? Why does the mind feel this compulsive need to fight against the very fabric of existence? To answer that, we must turn our attention to one of the most central and most liberating of all Buddhist insights, the truth of impermanence. Our suffering, we have seen, is not caused by the events of our lives, but by the second arrows we fire in response, by our deep-seated habit of resisting reality. This brings us to a crucial question. What is this fundamental nature of reality that we fight against with such futile determination? The answer lies in a single, universal law, a truth so profound and all-encompassing that it touches every aspect of our existence. This is the law of Anicca, the Pali word for impermanence. The Buddha taught that everything, without exception, is in a constant state of flux. There is nothing in the entire cosmos, from the grandest galaxy to the most fleeting thought, that you can point to and say, "This will last forever." To resist this truth is like trying to build a dam out of sand at the edge of the ocean. It is a project doomed to failure, and the effort will bring nothing but exhaustion and sorrow. Our anxiety is the sound of our own spirit breaking against this unchangeable law. We suffer precisely because we demand permanence from a world that can only offer us change. Look first at the landscape of your own mind. Your feelings are in a constant state of motion. A moment of joy arises, vibrant and warm, and we immediately cling to it. We want to possess it, to make it our home, but it is a guest, not a resident. It stays for a while, and then it departs. In its place, a feeling of sadness might drift in, heavy and grey. We resist this visitor. We push it away. We treat it as an intruder. We suffer because we want to keep the pleasant feelings and expel the unpleasant ones, forgetting that they are all just weather patterns passing through the vast sky of our awareness. They are not us, and they are not permanent. The anxious mind forgets this. It grabs a fearful thought and holds it tight, examining it from all angles, feeding it, believing in its solidity, treating it as a prophecy rather than what it is, a momentary flicker of neural activity. The peaceful mind, the mind that understands impermanence, allows the joyful feeling to be fully experienced without clinging, and allows the sad or fearful feeling to be present without resistance, knowing that it too, like a cloud, will eventually drift by. Consider your own body, the vessel that carries you through this life. From the moment of your birth, it has been changing, and it will continue to change until your death. We spend fortunes and immense amounts of energy resisting this natural process. We cling to the image of youth, to the feeling of peak vitality, and we experience deep anxiety as we witness the first gray hairs, the new lines around our eyes, the aches and pains that signal the passage of time. Sickness, aging, and death are not moral failings. They are the very definition of being a biological organism. They are the law of Anicca written into our own cells. To fight this is to fight our own nature. To accept it is to find a sense of grace and dignity in every stage of life. To care for the body we have today, rather than mourning the body we had yesterday, or fearing the body we will have tomorrow. This law extends to everything we hold dear in the external world. Our relationships are not static entities. They are living, breathing processes that evolve and change. People grow, circumstances shift, and the dynamics between us are in constant flow. To demand that a relationship stay exactly as it was in its most perfect moment is to suffocate it. Our possessions, which we work so hard to acquire, will eventually break, become obsolete, or be lost. Our careers, our social status, our homes, none of these are stable ground. They are all part of the great, flowing river of existence. The anxiety we feel, the sleepless nights spent worrying about losing what we have, come directly from this illusion that we can build a permanent fortress of security in the midst of this flowing river. We cannot. The only peace available is to learn how to float. There is perhaps no story that illustrates this painful yet liberating lesson more powerfully than that of Kisa Gotami. She was a young woman whose life was shattered when her only child, a young toddler, fell ill and died. Consumed by a grief so profound that it bordered on madness, she refused to accept his death. She clutched the small, lifeless body to her chest and wandered through her village, going from house to house, begging for a medicine that could bring her son back to life. Some people turned away from her. Others pitied her. Some thought she had lost her mind, but she persisted. Her love and her denial forming an unbreakable shield against reality. Finally, she was sent to see the Buddha. She laid her son at his feet and pleaded, "Can you make a medicine that will cure my boy?" The Buddha looked at her with immense compassion and said, "I can, but to make this medicine, I require one ingredient. You must bring me a single mustard seed from a house where no one has ever died." Kisa Gotami's heart soared with hope. A single mustard seed. That was all. It was a simple task. She began her journey again, her hope renewed, going from house to house with a new sense of purpose. At the first house, she asked, "The Buddha has sent me to fetch a mustard seed to make a medicine for my son. Can you spare one?" "Of course," the woman of the house replied. "We have plenty." As the woman went to fetch it, Kisa Gotami asked the question the Buddha had instructed her to ask. "Has anyone in this house, a parent, a child, a spouse, or a servant, ever died?" The woman's face fell. "Oh lady," she said, "the living are few, but the dead are many. Do not remind us of our deepest grief." Kisa Gotami left without the seed and went to the next house, and the next, and the next. The story was the same everywhere. Every family had mustard seeds to spare, but every family had also known the pain of loss. One had lost a husband, another a daughter, another a father. As the day wore on and the sun began to set, the profound truth of her quest began to dawn on her. Her grief, which had felt so singular, so isolating, was in fact a universal experience. She had not been singled out for a unique cruelty. She was simply a member of the human family, a family defined by love, life, loss, and the unyielding law of impermanence. In that moment of realization, her frantic clinging began to soften. She took her son to the charnel ground, and as she laid him down, she understood that he had not been taken from her, but had simply followed the law that governs all things. Her personal tragedy had become the doorway to universal wisdom. She had learned, in the most painful way imaginable, the truth of Anicca. To accept impermanence is not to become cold, detached, or apathetic. It is not to say, nothing matters, so why bother trying? This is the great misunderstanding. In fact, it is the opposite. The recognition that everything is fleeting is precisely what gives life its beauty and its urgency. You do not love a magnificent sunset any less because you know it will fade into darkness. You cherish it more. You pay closer attention. You are more fully present for its glorious, transient beauty. Accepting impermanence means you can love a person more fully and freely, right now, without the anxious burden of demanding they never change or never leave. It means you can engage with your work with passion and dedication, finding joy in the process itself, rather than attaching all your happiness to an uncertain and fleeting outcome. It liberates us from the prison of the past, because the past is gone and no longer exists, and it frees us from the anxiety of the future, because the future is unwritten and unknowable. It brings us home to the only place where life is actually happening, this present moment. By ceasing our war with change, we can finally find peace within its flow. We can allow our thoughts, our feelings, and our experiences to arise, to be, and to pass away, without the frantic clenching that causes so much pain. We have now seen that the world and everything in it is a ceaseless river of change, and that our suffering is born from our desperate attempt to stand still in its current. But this raises a new, more personal question. What is it within us that is doing the clinging? What is this part of our consciousness that builds the dams of resistance, that demands permanence, that believes it is a solid, separate entity standing apart from the flow? To find the next piece of the puzzle of our own liberation, we must turn our gaze inward and become acquainted with the very architect of our anxieties, the elusive and powerful construct we call the self, the ego. We have arrived at a fundamental insight that the universe is a river of ceaseless change, and our suffering is the friction generated by our attempt to stand still within it. This naturally leads us to look inward, to ask the most intimate of questions. What is this I that resists? What is this entity within us that clings so desperately to the fleeting forms of the world, that demands permanence in the face of universal flux, that constructs elaborate fortresses of belief and identity, only to live in constant fear of their collapse? The Buddhist tradition invites us to investigate this self, not as a solid, continuous entity, but as a process, a dynamic, and often problematic construction of the mind. This construction is the ego. It is crucial to approach this exploration not with aggression, as if the ego were an enemy to be destroyed, but with the gentle curiosity of a scientist. The ego is not inherently evil. It is a survival mechanism born of fear, a function of the mind that evolved to help us navigate a complex world by creating a stable center of operations. However, in the realm of our inner life, this well-intentioned mechanism becomes the primary architect of our anxiety and our sleepless nights. The ego is, first and foremost, a storyteller. It is the relentless narrator in our head that weaves together the scattered threads of our memories, our sensations, our beliefs, and our future projections into a seemingly coherent narrative titled Me. This story is composed of countless labels that we identify with. I am a parent. I am an artist. I am a manager. I am a spiritual person. It also includes judgments. I am smart. I am not attractive enough. I am good at this. I am a failure at that. The ego clings to these labels as if they were a solid identity. But because these labels are built on the shifting sands of impermanence, the ego lives in a state of perpetual insecurity. When someone praises our work, the I am a capable person story is reinforced, and we feel a moment of pleasure. But when someone criticizes our work, that same story is threatened, and the ego experiences this as a direct assault, triggering a cascade of defensive anger or anxious self-doubt. The turmoil we feel is the ego fighting to protect its fragile narrative from the unwelcome intrusion of reality. At night, when the roles and activities that prop up these stories are stripped away, the narrator goes into overdrive, spinning tales of past failures and future catastrophes in a desperate attempt to maintain its own sense of existence. Furthermore, the ego is a relentless comparer. It cannot know itself through its own intrinsic nature, so it seeks to define itself by measuring against others. It is the part of us that scrolls through social media and feels a pang of envy at a friend's vacation, a colleague's promotion, or a stranger's seemingly perfect life. It looks at another's success and feels its own sense of lack. It looks at another's beauty and feels its own inadequacy. This constant comparison is a furnace of suffering, generating endless supplies of jealousy, resentment, and the pervasive feeling of not being enough. It creates an imaginary competition where there is none, turning life into a race for validation, a race with no finish line and no true prize. The anxiety that arises from this is immense. We worry about keeping up, about falling behind, about what others think of us. We are performing for an audience that is mostly imagined, an audience created by the ego to serve as its mirror. This outward focus disconnects us from our own authentic experience, leaving us feeling hollow and perpetually insecure. The ego is also a great possessor. It extends its sense of self beyond the body and mind and into the objects and ideas it considers mine. My house, my car, my reputation, my political beliefs, my opinions. The more it possesses, the larger and more solid it feels. This is why a dent in a new car can feel like a personal injury, or why a challenge to one of our long-held beliefs can feel like a physical threat. The ego has fused its identity with these external, impermanent things. Therefore, the threat of losing them becomes a threat of self-diminishment. The worry about the stock market is not just about money. It is about the successful investor identity being threatened. The fierce defense of an opinion is not just about the idea. It is about the intelligent person identity being challenged. This identification with the transient is a primary source of our clinging and consequently our suffering. We become guardians of a vast and unstable museum of possessions and concepts, a stressful and exhausting full-time job. Here we find the deepest fear of the ego, the fear of its own dissolution, because the ego is nothing more than a bundle of thoughts, stories, and identifications. It has no inherent, solid reality. It is a ghost, and it lives in constant, mortal terror of being found out. Any experience that threatens its structure is perceived as a threat of annihilation. Change is terrifying to the ego because it disrupts the narrative. Loss is terrifying because it diminishes the ego's kingdom of possessions. Criticism is terrifying because it pokes holes in the story of self. And silence, true, deep silence, is perhaps the most terrifying of all, because in the absence of mental chatter, the ego has nothing to do, no story to spin, no identity to perform. It begins to dissolve, and this feels like death. This is precisely why meditation can be so challenging at first, and it is the very reason we struggle to find peace in the quiet of the night. The surrender required for deep, restful sleep is a temporary letting go of the ego. It is a release of the storyteller, a suspension of the comparer, a loosening of the possessor's grip. The ego fights this surrender with all its might, interpreting this peaceful void as a dangerous abyss. It would rather fill the silence with anxious thoughts and frantic planning than face its own non-existence. The storm of worry at 3 in the morning is the ego's frantic attempt to shout, "I am still here. I am still in control. I still exist." A beautiful Zen parable illustrates this mechanism perfectly. A man was meditating in his small boat on a vast, misty lake. He had his eyes closed, fully absorbed in the stillness. Suddenly, a jarring thud struck the side of his boat, jolting him from his peace. A surge of anger rose within him. He opened his eyes, ready to yell at the careless boatman who had disturbed his tranquility. His mind instantly created a story about an inconsiderate, clumsy person who had no respect for others. His ego felt wronged, insulted. He turned to face the offending boat, his angry words already formed on his lips, only to see that the boat was empty. It had simply come unmoored and drifted into him on the current. In that instant, his anger vanished completely. There was no one to be angry at. The bump was just an event, a neutral happening. The anger, he realized, was created entirely by his own mind, by his ego's story of a me who was wronged by a you. The anger had nowhere to land on an empty boat. So often in our lives, our anxiety, our resentment, and our stress are directed at empty boats. A colleague who doesn't reply to an email, a driver who cuts us off in traffic, a partner who seems distant. We react not to the event itself, but to the story our ego instantly creates around it. A story that always stars a victimized me. Learning to see the empty boat in these situations, to see the impersonal nature of most events, is to pull the plug on the power of the ego. Understanding the ego is not about creating a new, more sophisticated story of, "I am a person who has overcome my ego." That is just another, more subtle, egoic trap. It is simply about seeing it for what it is, a useful but limited tool, a collection of conditioned mental habits. It is about learning to disidentify from it, to realize that you are not the voice in your head. You are the one who hears the voice. You are not the storm. You are the sky in which the storm takes place. This recognition is the beginning of true freedom. We see the ego's desperate attempts to control and defend itself not as our own, but as the impersonal machinations of a conditioned mechanism. This allows us to ask a pivotal question. If acceptance is the path to peace, and the ego is the source of resistance, then what is this act of acceptance? Is it something the ego can decide to do, another strategy for it to control its experience? Or is it something else entirely, a state of being that emerges only when the ego's frantic activity is allowed to subside? To find the answer, we must now explore the profound difference between acceptance and its common counterfeit, passivity. Having journeyed into the nature of impermanence and unveiled the ego as the primary agent of resistance, we arrive at the very heart of this practice, the principle of acceptance. And it is here that we encounter one of the greatest and most common stumbling blocks on the spiritual path. For many of us, the word acceptance lands with a thud. It can sound weak, like resignation, like giving up. The ego, which thrives on control, struggle, and the drama of winning and losing, recoils from the idea. It whispers in our ear that acceptance is for the defeated, that it means being a doormat, that it means condoning injustice or letting the world walk all over us. To the ego, acceptance looks like failure. This deep-seated misunderstanding is a formidable barrier, and it is essential that we dismantle it with clarity and care, for to mistake acceptance for passivity is to miss its profound and revolutionary power entirely. True acceptance is not an act of weakness. It is an expression of the deepest strength. Let us first paint a clear picture of what acceptance is not. It is not passivity. Passivity is rooted in fear, denial, and hopelessness. The passive person sees a problem and turns away. They feel the pain of a toxic relationship, but do nothing, believing they are powerless. They see injustice in the world and say, "It's not my problem," or "Nothing can be done." Passivity is choosing to be blind. It is the abdication of your power and your responsibility. It is allowing the circumstances of your life to dictate your experience entirely. It is a state of deep denial, a refusal to even look at the truth of a situation because it seems too overwhelming. Passivity is the heavy inertia that keeps us stuck in patterns that no longer serve us, all under the guise of going with the flow. But this is not the flow of the river, it is the stagnation of a swamp. Acceptance, on the other hand, is the very opposite of blindness. It is an act of radical, courageous seeing. It is the willingness to look at the full reality of this present moment, without blinking, without turning away, and without the filter of our preferences. Acceptance does not mean you have to like what you see. It does not mean you have to approve of it or want it to continue. It simply means you acknowledge that it is. It is the calm, clear, and unwavering recognition of the truth. Acceptance says, this is the situation. This is the feeling. This is the diagnosis. This is the bank statement. It is a moment of profound honesty, a cessation of the internal war with reality. And in this cessation of hostility, a new kind of power is born. This power lies in the fact that acceptance is always the starting point for wise and effective action. Imagine you are lost in a dense forest. To find your way out, what is the first piece of information you need? You need to know your current location. If you are in the northern part of the forest, but you stubbornly insist you are in the southern part, any map you have is useless. Any direction you walk will only take you deeper into confusion. Denial and resistance are the act of insisting you are somewhere you are not. Only from that point of honest assessment can you consult the map and chart an intelligent course forward. Acceptance is the "you are here" marker on the map of your life. Without it, you are truly lost. Let us apply this to the concrete challenges we face. Consider a person who receives a difficult medical diagnosis. The passive response is to ignore it, to not schedule follow-up appointments, to live in a state of frightened denial, hoping it will simply vanish. The resistant response is to be consumed by anger and despair, to get lost in the "why me" narrative, firing second arrow after second arrow, wasting precious energy that could be used for healing. The response of acceptance is to take a deep breath and say, "This is the reality of my body today. This is the information I have." This does not mean they are happy about it. It means they have stopped fighting a battle with the diagnosis itself. From this clear-headed starting point, they can then ask the truly important questions. What are my treatment options? How can I best support my own healing? What lifestyle changes can I make? Acceptance is not the end of the road. It is the opening of the door to every constructive possibility. Consider the person struggling with financial debt. Passivity is letting the unopened bills pile up on the table, the fear so great that they cannot even look. Resistance is the constant, low-grade anxiety and shame that churns in their stomach, a state of perpetual stress that paralyzes them and prevents them from taking action. Acceptance is the courageous act of sitting down, opening every envelope, and writing down the exact numbers without judgment. It is the moment of saying, "This is the financial truth of my life right now." It is a difficult, painful moment, but it is also a moment of immense liberation. The vague, monstrous fear is replaced by a concrete, manageable problem. From this point of clarity, they can create a budget, seek advice, and take the first small step towards freedom. The problem does not change, but their relationship to it is revolutionized. And in that revolution, they reclaim their power. The wisdom of this approach is captured beautifully in the parable of the oak and the reed. In a field stood a mighty oak tree, broad and strong. It took great pride in its size and its unyielding strength. Next to it, by the riverbank, grew a slender reed. The oak looked down on the reed, seeing it as fragile and weak. One day, a great typhoon swept through the land. The wind howled with incredible force. The mighty oak, in its pride and rigidity, stood firm against the gale. It resisted with every fiber of its being, refusing to bend, refusing to yield. The strain was immense, and finally, with a great cracking sound, the oak's trunk shattered and it came crashing to the ground, a monument to the failure of resistance. The humble reed, however, did not fight the wind. As the gale blew, it bent low, yielding to the storm's immense power, letting the force of it wash over it completely. When the storm had passed and the sun returned, the mighty oak lay broken and destroyed, and the slender reed, which had bowed to reality, slowly rose up again, unharmed and whole. The reed's strength was not in its rigidity, but in its flexibility. It survived not by fighting, but by yielding. Acceptance is the wisdom of the reed. It is the understanding that in the face of life's great storms, our rigid resistance will only lead to our breaking. Our salvation lies in the ability to bend, to yield, to harmonize with the forces that are, so that we may endure and rise again when the storm has passed. When we live in a state of resistance, we are wasting a colossal amount of life energy. Imagine trying to hold a large, inflatable ball underwater. It requires constant, exhausting pressure. The moment you are distracted, it bursts to the surface. Fighting reality, whether it's a past mistake, a present difficulty, or a future fear, is exactly like this. It is a constant, draining expenditure of our vital force. Acceptance is the simple act of letting go of the ball. In that moment of release, all the energy that was bound up in the struggle is suddenly liberated. This is not the energy of apathy. It is the vibrant, creative energy of life itself. It can now be channeled into healing, into finding solutions, into offering compassion, into experiencing the richness of the present moment. This is why people who practice acceptance often report feeling lighter, more energetic, and more alive. They have stopped wasting their strength on a war they can never win, the war against what is. Acceptance, therefore, is not giving up. It is showing up, fully and completely, for the life that is yours to live. It is the first, essential step toward any true peace or meaningful change. But how do we apply this principle, not just to the storms outside, but to the tempests within? How do we learn to accept the very feelings of grief, fear, and sadness that we so desperately wish to escape? To answer this, we must learn how to turn this compassionate, accepting awareness inward and befriend the shadows of our own hearts. We have journeyed to the understanding that acceptance is not a passive surrender, but a courageous and intelligent engagement with reality. We have seen how it can be the starting point for wise action in our external lives, in our health, our finances, and our relationships. Now, we must turn this powerful lens of acceptance inward to the most intimate and often most turbulent territory of all, our own emotional landscape. This is where the practice moves from the conceptual to the deeply personal. It is one thing to accept an external fact. It is quite another to accept the searing heat of anger, the cold grip of fear, or the heavy weight of sorrow as it arises within our own body. Our lifelong conditioning has taught us to do the exact opposite. From our earliest years, we learn to label our feelings as good or bad. Joy, excitement, and love are good. They are welcomed and encouraged. Anxiety, sadness, and anger are bad. They are to be fixed, suppressed, distracted from, or banished as quickly as possible. We have been trained to be at war with half of our own human experience, and this internal battle is profoundly exhausting and utterly unwinnable. This war takes many forms. Sometimes we suppress. We feel a wave of sadness coming, and we immediately busy ourselves with work, scroll through our phones, or pour a drink, anything to avoid feeling the raw emotion. We try to push the feeling down into the basement of our consciousness, locking the door behind it. But feelings do not die when they are ignored. They fester in the dark, gaining strength, and often re-emerge later with even greater force, expressing themselves as chronic anxiety, depression, or explosive outbursts. Other times, we fight. We feel anxiety rising, and we get angry at it. Not this again. Why can't I just be normal? I have to get rid of this feeling. We treat our own emotion as a foreign invader, attacking it with self-criticism and judgment. This is like trying to put out a fire by throwing fuel on it. The struggle, the resistance, the judgment, all become new layers of suffering piled on top of the original feeling. We believe the emotion is the problem, but the true problem is the war we are waging against it. The practice of acceptance offers a radical and compassionate peace treaty. It invites us to end the war, not by defeating our feelings, but by befriending them. The first step in this process is to gently shift our language and our perspective. When a difficult emotion arises, we typically fuse with it. We say, "I am anxious," or "I am angry." In that moment, the emotion has hijacked our entire identity. There is no separation. A more skillful approach is to create a small space of awareness by simply naming what is present. You can say to yourself, "Ah, anxiety is here," or "I am experiencing the feeling of sadness." This subtle change in language is profound. It shifts the emotion from being the totality of who you are to being a temporary experience that is passing through you. You are no longer the storm. You are the sky in which the storm is happening. This act of naming, done without judgment, is the first step in disidentifying from the emotion and reclaiming your position as the calm, witnessing presence behind the experience. Once you have acknowledged the emotion's presence, the next step is to consciously stop fighting it. This is the heart of the practice. Mentally, you can visualize dropping a rope in a tug of war. You are not surrendering to the emotion in the sense of letting it control you. You are simply ceasing the futile act of trying to control it. You make a conscious decision to allow the feeling to be there. For now. This requires courage. It is an act of opening of making space for the uncomfortable. Imagine your body as a house. For so long, you have been trying to barricade the doors and windows against the bad weather of your feelings. The practice of allowing is the act of unbarring the door, opening the windows, and letting the wind of the emotion blow through. It may be uncomfortable for a time, but you know that by letting it move freely, it will eventually pass. By keeping it locked out or locked in, you create immense and damaging pressure. This step is not about liking the feeling. It is simply about ending the costly and exhausting war of resistance. The most powerful and transformative part of this practice involves turning your attention away from the story in your head and toward the raw, physical sensations of the emotion in your body. Our mind loves to spin narratives around our feelings. When anxiety appears, the mind immediately begins its monologue. I'm anxious because of that meeting tomorrow. And what if I fail? And then everyone will think I'm incompetent. This is the second arrow, and it is the fuel that keeps the fire of the emotion burning. The antidote is to drop out of the story and into the body. Ask yourself, with gentle, scientific curiosity, where do I feel this anxiety in my body? Right now. Move your awareness inward. Perhaps you feel a tightness in your chest, a knot in your stomach, a tingling in your hands, or a sense of heat in your face. Your only job is to observe these raw physical sensations without judging them or wishing them to be different. Notice their quality. Is the sensation sharp or dull? Is it vibrating or still? Is it expanding or contracting? You are not analyzing it. You are simply feeling it directly as pure energy. By anchoring your awareness in the physical sensations, you cut the fuel line from the storytelling mind. You are no longer adding second arrows. You are simply being with the clean pain of the first arrow and allowing it to be. The great Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh offered a beautiful and deeply compassionate metaphor for this practice. He taught us to treat our difficult emotions like a crying baby. Imagine your anxiety, your fear, or your anger is a small infant wailing in its crib. A reactive and untrained parent might become angry, yelling at the baby to be quiet, or they might ignore the baby, shutting the door and hoping it cries itself to sleep. We know, instinctively, that both of these approaches are cruel and ineffective. They only increase the baby's suffering. A wise and loving parent hears the cry and immediately goes to the child. They don't demand to know why the baby is crying. They don't judge the baby for crying. Their first and only act is to gently pick the baby up, to hold it close, and to cradle it with warmth and tenderness. They soothe it with their calm presence, perhaps whispering, "There, little one. I am here. I will take care of you." This is precisely how we must learn to relate to our own pain. Our mindful awareness is the parent. Our difficult emotion is the crying baby. When anxiety arises, we must learn to pick it up with our attention. We hold it with the warmth of our non-judgmental awareness. We cradle it with compassion. We say to our own feeling, "Hello, my old friend. Anxiety, I know you are there. I will not abandon you. I will stay with you until you are calm." The simple act of holding our pain with this kind of unconditional, loving presence is profoundly healing. It does not mean the pain will vanish instantly, but it means we are no longer creating a second layer of suffering through abandonment or aggression. When you stop fighting a feeling, when you allow it to be there, when you hold it with compassionate, embodied awareness, a magical thing begins to happen. The emotion, which previously seemed so solid and monstrous, begins to lose its power. By allowing the physical energy of the emotion to be felt without resistance, you allow it to complete its natural life cycle. Energy, needs to move. When you observe it, it flows, it shifts, it changes its texture and intensity, and eventually, it dissolves back into the space from which it came. The tight knot in your stomach may loosen, the heat in your face may cool. The storm passes. This is not a trick to make feelings go away faster. It is a genuine shift in relationship, from one of fear and hostility to one of courage, kindness, and wisdom. This is the art of befriending your own shadows, and it is the key to true inner peace. Having learned to offer this tender acceptance to our own inner world, we are now far better equipped to face one of the greatest challenges on this path, extending that same radical acceptance outward to the other people in our lives, especially those who challenge us and cause us pain. Having turned the gentle light of acceptance inward to befriend our own difficult emotions, we must now extend this practice into one of the most challenging and rewarding arenas of our lives, our relationships with other people. It is here, in our interactions with partners, family, friends, and colleagues, that our practice is truly tested. It is where our attachments, our judgments, and our deep-seated need for control are most vividly on display. For most of us, our relationships are a primary source of both our greatest joys and our deepest suffering. And the Buddhist perspective suggests that much of this suffering does not come from other people themselves, but from the gap between who they are and who we demand them to be. We walk through life carrying intricate, invisible blueprints in our minds for how everyone else should behave, and we exhaust ourselves in the futile attempt to force them to conform to our designs. Consider the blueprint you hold for a romantic partner. It may specify that they should be emotionally expressive in a certain way, share all of your interests, anticipate your needs without you having to ask, and never say or do the things that trigger you. Consider the blueprint for your parents, who perhaps should have been more supportive, less critical, and should have made different choices. Or the blueprint for your child, who should be more ambitious, less sensitive, or follow a particular career path. We are all directors of an imaginary play, constantly giving notes to the other actors, frustrated and bewildered when they fail to follow our script. This project of trying to change and control others is the source of endless conflict, resentment, and anxiety. It is a full-time job that pays only in disappointment. We believe our happiness is contingent on them changing, and so we plead, we argue, we manipulate, and we withhold our love, all in an effort to remodel their soul to our own liking. This is not love. It is a form of violence. The practice of acceptance offers a revolutionary alternative: to fire ourselves from the impossible job of director and to simply allow others to be the actors they are, playing their own part in this grand, unscripted play of life. Here we must make a crucial distinction, for this is where the ego often rebels, crying out that acceptance means becoming a doormat. To accept another person as they are does not mean you must condone or tolerate harmful, abusive, or disrespectful behavior. This is not a call for martyrdom, it is a call for radical honesty. Acceptance is about seeing the reality of a person's patterns without the distorting filter of wishful thinking. For instance, if someone in your life consistently breaks their promises, acceptance means you stop telling yourself the story, "This time will be different." Instead, you acknowledge the reality. This person has a pattern of not following through. If someone has a volatile temper, acceptance means you stop hoping they will magically become calm. You see the truth. This person reacts with intense anger under pressure. This clear seeing is not a judgment of them as a bad person. It is a non-judgmental observation of their actual behavior. It is the raw data, free from the story you wish were true. This clear-eyed acceptance is the only solid ground upon which you can build healthy boundaries. As long as you are living in the hope that someone will change, your boundaries will be porous and inconsistent, easily collapsing at the first sign of a temporary improvement. But when you accept the reality of their behavior, your boundaries become an act of wisdom and self-care, not an act of punishment or control. Your boundary is no longer about trying to change them. It is about taking care of yourself in the face of the reality of who they are. For example, because I accept that this person is not capable of respecting my emotional needs, I will limit the amount of time I spend with them and cease sharing my deepest vulnerabilities. Or, because I accept that this person becomes verbally aggressive when they drink, I will choose to leave the situation if they begin drinking. Notice the shift. The focus moves from controlling them to taking responsibility for your own safety and well-being. The boundary is calm, clear, and based on the firm foundation of reality, not the shifting sands of hope. A timeless Zen story illuminates this principle with beautiful simplicity. Two monks, one old and wise, the other young and zealous, were on a long pilgrimage. They came to a river where the current was strong and the ford was muddy. A beautiful young woman stood there, dressed in fine silks, hesitating to cross for fear of ruining her clothes and being swept away. Without a word, the older monk walked up to her, hoisted her onto his back, carried her across the turbulent water, and gently set her down on the other side. He then bowed and continued on his journey. The younger monk was aghast. He was consumed by a storm of inner turmoil. His mind raced. We are monks. We have taken vows not to touch a woman. This is a serious transgression. How could he be so undisciplined? What will people think? For the next several hours, they walked in silence. But the younger monk's mind was anything but silent. He replayed the scene over and over, his indignation and judgment growing with every step. Finally, unable to bear it any longer, he burst out, "How could you do that? You know our vows forbid us from touching a woman, let alone a beautiful one. You have broken our sacred precepts." The older monk looked at his agitated companion with a calm, gentle gaze and replied, "I left her by the river hours ago. Why are you still carrying her?" This story is a profound mirror for our own lives. The older monk dealt with the reality of the present moment. A person needed help, and he helped. Then he let the moment go. The younger monk, however, became trapped, not by the event itself, but by his rigid ideas, his blueprint for how a monk should behave. He was not carrying the woman. He was carrying the crushing weight of his own judgment, his own resistance to what had actually happened. How often are we like the young monk? We carry around slights, disappointments, and frustrations with other people for hours, days, or even years. We are not suffering from what they did. We are suffering from our own, clinging to the story of what they did. A story fueled by our expectation that they should have been different. To accept others as they are is to learn to leave them by the riverbank. It is to grant them the freedom to be who they are, and in doing so, to grant ourselves the far greater freedom of putting down the heavy burden of our own judgment. There is a deeper layer to this practice as well. Often, the things that irritate us most intensely in other people serve as a mirror, reflecting back to us a part of ourselves that we have not yet acknowledged or accepted. This is what the psychologist Carl Jung called the shadow, the disowned parts of our own psyche. If you find yourself incredibly angered by someone's perceived arrogance, it may be worth asking, is there a part of me that is insecure about my own worth? If you are constantly frustrated by a partner's lack of organization, It might be that it touches your own deep-seated fear of chaos and your need for control. This is not to say the other person's behavior is excused, nor is it to blame ourselves. It is an invitation to use our relationships as a powerful form of mindfulness practice. When we feel a strong negative reaction to someone, we can learn to pause and ask, what is this situation reflecting back to me? What nerve is being touched? In this way, the people who challenge us the most can become our greatest teachers, illuminating the unhealed places within our own hearts. Accepting others as they are, then, is ultimately an act of self-liberation. It is the cessation of a futile war. It frees up the immense energy we once poured into trying to control the world and allows us to channel it into our own healing and growth. We have now applied the lens of acceptance to our inner world of feelings and our outer world of relationships. But there is one more territory we must venture into, a realm haunted by the ghosts of what has been. To find a truly unshakable peace, we must learn to cast the light of acceptance on the one thing we can never change, our own past. Having learned to approach our present moment feelings with kindness and our relationships with clarity, we now turn to face what is for many of us the heaviest burden of all. We turn to face the ghosts of yesterday. Our past, with all of its triumphs and tragedies, its moments of grace and its profound mistakes, can feel like a vast, inescapable landscape that we are doomed to wander through for the rest of our lives. It is the source of our deepest regrets and our most bitter resentments. The memories of what we should have done, what was unfairly done to us, or what we have lost, can haunt the quiet hours of the night, replaying in our minds like a movie we are forced to watch again and again. This weight of the past is a primary cause of our anxiety and our inability to find peace. To be truly free, to sleep with a quiet mind, we must learn how to make peace with this past. And the only way to do so is through the courageous and compassionate act of acceptance. The first step in this profound process is to understand the true nature of the past. We think of the past as a real place, a fixed and solid country from which we have come. But in the light of Buddhist psychology, the past has no actual existence. It is gone. It does not exist anywhere in the universe. The only place the past lives is within our own minds, right here in the present moment. The past is a collection of memories, and a memory is nothing more than a thought, an image, or a feeling that is arising now. The event itself, the thing that happened 10 years ago, or 10 minutes ago, is over. Its reality has vanished completely. The suffering we experience does not come from the event itself. It comes from our present moment relationship with the memory of that event. It comes from the story we continue to tell ourselves about it. This is a revolutionary insight. It means that our suffering is not caused by an unchangeable history, but by a present moment mental habit. And because it is a habit happening now, it is something we can work with and transform. Our suffering from the past typically takes two primary forms: regret and resentment. Regret is the anger we direct toward ourselves. It is the mind's endless and torturous loop of if only. If only I had taken that job. If only I hadn't said that hurtful thing. If only I had been a better parent, a better partner, a better person. We become our own prosecuting attorney, putting ourselves on trial again and again for crimes that can never be undone, sentencing ourselves to a life of quiet self-loathing. This is a profound form of resistance. It is an argument with history, a war against a reality that is already set in stone. It is as futile as arguing with gravity, and it drains us of the precious energy we need to live our lives today. Resentment, on the other hand, is the anger we direct toward others. It is the poison of the grudge, the heavy stone of bitterness we carry for those who have wronged us. We believe that by holding on to our anger, we are somehow punishing the other person. But, as the famous saying goes, holding on to resentment is like drinking poison and waiting for the other person to die. The only person being harmed is the one drinking the poison. The other person may be living their life completely unaware of our inner turmoil, while we are the ones who are reopening our own wound every single day, keeping the pain fresh and alive by replaying the injustice in our minds. Both regret and resentment are chains that bind us to a past that no longer exists, preventing us from ever being fully present in the only moment we ever truly have, which is this one. Accepting the past is the key that unlocks these chains. Let us be perfectly clear about what this means. Accepting the past does not mean condoning harmful actions. It does not mean saying that what happened was okay, or that it wasn't painful. It certainly does not mean forgetting. It means something far more powerful. It is the simple, profound, and deeply peaceful acknowledgement that it happened. It is the cessation of the war with history. It is the moment we finally stop arguing with what was, when we can look at our own past mistakes and say, yes, I did that. That is part of my story. Or look at a wound inflicted by another and say, yes, that happened to me. That is part of my journey. A great burden begins to lift. The energy that was consumed by the fight, by the resistance, by the endless replaying, is liberated. We stop being a victim of our own history and start becoming a student of it. The beloved Buddhist monk, Ajahn Brahm, tells a wonderful story that illustrates the healing power of accepting our own imperfections. He was overseeing the construction of a new building at his monastery in Australia, and he had hired a contractor to build a brick wall at the front. When he came to inspect the work, he noticed with a sinking feeling that the bricklayer had made a significant mistake. For a stretch of several meters, the wall was noticeably crooked. It was a glaring flaw. The conventional response, the response of a perfectionistic ego, would have been anger, blame, and a demand to tear the wall down and rebuild it correctly. But Ajahn Brahm, steeped in the wisdom of acceptance, did something different. He looked at the crooked wall. He paused, and then he gathered the other monks around. He pointed to the floor and announced, "This is a limited edition wall. It is a unique, handmade, imperfect original. This crookedness is its special feature, its signature." He didn't just tolerate the mistake, he reframed it. He celebrated it. He accepted the reality of what had been built and then transformed its meaning. That wall became a beloved feature of the monastery, a teaching for all who saw it. This story is a powerful metaphor for our own lives. We all have crooked walls in our past. We all have mistakes, failures, and embarrassing moments that we try to hide or tear down in our minds. The practice of acceptance invites us to see these flaws not as sources of shame, but as the unique, handmade features that make our life our own. They are the very things that have taught us, shaped us, and given us the capacity for compassion and wisdom. To accept our past mistakes is to accept the beautiful, imperfect, crooked wall of our own human life. This leads us to the practice of forgiveness, which is the ultimate expression of accepting the past. Forgiving others is not about absolving them of their responsibility or letting them off the hook. It is about letting ourselves off the hook. It is the conscious decision to put down the heavy, poisonous stone of resentment, not for their sake, but for our own. It is a profound act of self-care, a declaration that you will no longer allow a past event to contaminate your present peace. Forgiveness is the gift of freedom that you give to yourself. And perhaps even more challenging is the practice of forgiving ourselves. This is where we apply the lesson of the crooked wall to our own hearts. It is the willingness to look at our past actions with compassion, recognizing that at the time we did the best we could with the knowledge, the maturity, and the resources we had available. It is the act of ending the internal war, of pardoning ourselves for the crime of being imperfectly human. By accepting the past, we are not erasing it, we are learning from it. The past is an invaluable teacher if we approach it with wisdom. We can extract the lessons from our mistakes so we don't repeat them. We can understand how our wounds have shaped us so we can heal them. But once the lesson is learned, we do not need to keep living in the classroom. Acceptance allows us to glean the wisdom without being imprisoned by the story. It allows us to finally unpack that heavy bag of stones we have been carrying for so long, to look at each one, to understand its lesson, and then to leave it behind. It allows us to bring all of our energy, all of our attention, all of our life force out of the non-existent past and into the vibrant, living reality of the present moment. We have now explored the what and the why of acceptance as it applies to our feelings, to other people, and to our own history. The question that naturally arises is how? How do we train the mind on a moment-to-moment basis to stay in this place of calm observation and non-judgment? For this, we must turn to the foundational practice of Buddhist psychology, the gentle, powerful, and life-altering tool of mindfulness. We have journeyed through the great landscapes of acceptance, learning to open our hearts to our difficult feelings, to the reality of other people, and to the unchangeable nature of our own past. We have explored the profound philosophy of what it means to cease our internal war with reality. Now, we arrive at the essential and practical question of how. How, in the midst of a busy, stressful life, do we actually cultivate this state of acceptance? How do we train a mind that is conditioned to worry, to judge, and to resist, to instead become a vessel of peace and non-judgment? The answer lies in a practice that is both simple and profound, a skill that is the very heart of Buddhist psychology. This is the practice of mindfulness. If acceptance is the destination, mindfulness is the path that takes us there. It is the mental muscle we must train, the fundamental tool that allows all of these transformative ideas to move from the intellect into the felt reality of our lived experience. At its core, mindfulness is the practice of paying attention in a particular way, on purpose, in the present moment, and non-judgmentally. Let us unpack these three crucial components. First, we pay attention on purpose. This means mindfulness is not a passive or zoned-out state. It is an active and intentional choice. In a world that is constantly pulling our attention in 1,000 different directions, we make a conscious decision to bring our awareness to one single thing, right here, right now. Second, we pay attention in the present moment. This is the radical part of the practice. Our mind, by habit, loves to live anywhere but here. It dwells in the regrets and stories of the past, or it projects itself into the anxieties and fantasies of the future. Mindfulness is the gentle but firm act of returning home, again and again, to the only time that is ever real, which is this present moment. It is the practice of inhabiting our own lives as they are actually unfolding. The third component is the most transformative. We pay attention non-judgmentally. This is the very essence of acceptance woven into the fabric of our awareness. As we observe our experience, we practice letting go of our habitual tendency to label everything as good or bad, right or wrong, pleasant or unpleasant. We simply notice what is here. A sound is just a sound. A thought is just a thought. A physical sensation is just a sensation. We drop the second arrow of judgment and simply observe the first arrow of direct experience. This non-judgmental quality is what makes mindfulness a practice of profound kindness. We are not trying to fix ourselves or force ourselves to be different. We are simply offering our own experience the gift of our full, unbiased, and compassionate attention. It is vital to understand what mindfulness is not. The most common misconception is that mindfulness is about stopping your thoughts or emptying your mind. This belief is the source of immense frustration for beginners who sit down to practice, notice their mind is full of thoughts, and conclude they are failing. The goal of mindfulness is not to have an empty mind. That is impossible. The goal is to change your relationship with your thoughts. It is to learn that you do not have to be a prisoner of every thought that drifts through your consciousness. You can learn to observe your thoughts without getting swept away by them. Mindfulness is not a mysterious trance state, nor is it necessarily religious. It is a fundamental human capacity, the capacity to be aware, which we can all cultivate with practice, just like strengthening a muscle at the gym. To begin this practice, we need an anchor, something to hold our attention steady in the present moment amidst the swirling currents of the mind. For this, we use the breath. The breath is the perfect anchor. It is always with us. From the moment of our birth to the moment of our death, it is always happening in the present moment. You cannot breathe in the past or in the future, and it is a neutral, rhythmic process. To practice, you can begin by finding a comfortable posture, either sitting on a chair with your feet flat on the floor and your back straight but not stiff, or on a cushion on the floor. You can gently close your eyes or lower your gaze. The first step is simply to feel the physical sensations of your body sitting here. Then, gently bring your attention to the feeling of the breath as it moves in and out of your body. You might choose to focus on the feeling of the air passing through your nostrils, cool as it enters, warm as it leaves. Or you might rest your attention on the gentle rise and fall of your chest or your abdomen. Your only task is to feel these simple, physical sensations. You are not trying to control your breath or think about it. You are simply feeling it. Now comes the most important instruction. Sooner, or in all likelihood, later, you will notice that your mind has wandered. You set out to watch your breath, and a few moments later you find you are planning your dinner, replaying a conversation, or worrying about a work project. This is not a mistake. This is not a failure. This moment of noticing that your mind has wandered is the golden moment of mindfulness. It is the moment you have woken up from the dream of thought. The practice is what you do next. Without any anger or criticism toward yourself, you simply acknowledge where your mind has been, perhaps with a soft mental note of thinking or wandering, and then you gently, kindly, and patiently escort your attention back to the physical sensations of the breath. This is the practice. It is one repetition of a gentle, mental push-up. You rest your attention on the breath. The mind wanders. You notice it has wandered, and you gently bring it back. You will do this over and over and over again. The point is not to stop the mind from wandering. The point is to get better at noticing when it has wandered, and to be kind to yourself as you return. A beautiful and powerful metaphor for this practice is that of the sky and the clouds. Your true nature, your mindful awareness, is like the vast, open, boundless blue sky. The sky is always there, always peaceful, always whole. The thoughts, feelings, and sensations that pass through your experience are like the clouds. Some days the sky is filled with white, fluffy clouds of happiness. On other days, it is filled with dark, turbulent storm clouds of anxiety or sadness. We make the mistake of believing that we are the clouds. When a dark cloud appears, we think, "I am anxious," and we contract around it. We fight it. We believe our whole world has become that storm cloud. The practice of mindfulness is the gradual realization that you are not the cloud, you are not the weather, you are the sky. You are the vast, open, accepting space in which all the weather of your life happens. From the perspective of the sky, you can watch the storm clouds gather, you can feel their intensity, and you can watch them eventually pass, knowing that they cannot harm or stain the fundamental nature of the sky itself. Mindfulness is learning to rest in your sky-like nature, allowing the clouds of your experience to come and to go without resistance. While this practice can begin with formal seated meditation for 10 or 20 minutes a day, its true purpose is to seep into every moment of your life. You can practice mindfulness while drinking a cup of tea, by truly feeling its warmth in your hands, seeing its color, smelling its aroma, and tasting each sip fully, instead of being lost in thought. You can practice while washing the dishes, feeling the sensation of the warm water on your skin, hearing the sound of the plates, seeing the soap bubbles. You can practice while walking, feeling the contact of your feet on the ground with each step. By bringing this quality of present moment, non-judgmental attention to the simple activities of your day, you begin to transform your entire life into a meditation. You begin to live in a state of acceptance, because you are finally showing up for the life that is actually happening, not the one you are thinking about. Through this practice, we learn to be the calm sky for our own inner weather. But what if we could go further than just neutrally accepting what arises? What if we could actively cultivate a feeling of warmth, of kindness, and of goodwill, both for the difficult parts of ourselves and for the world around us? To do this, we turn from the mindfulness of what is to the intentional cultivation of a warm and open heart through the beautiful practice of loving kindness. Through the practice of mindfulness, we develop the crucial skill of observing our inner world with a calm and spacious clarity. We learn to be the sky, allowing the clouds of thought and emotion to pass through without being swept away by them. This is the foundation of peace. But the Buddhist path offers us more than just a truce in our inner war. It offers us a way to actively cultivate a profound and healing warmth, a way to plant a garden of kindness in the very soil where the weeds of self-criticism once grew. This is the practice of metta, or loving kindness, and it is the direct antidote to the harsh, relentless voice of the inner critic that fuels so much of our anxiety and our feelings of unworthiness. For most of us, the most dangerous and hostile neighborhood in the world is the one between our own two ears. We would never speak to a friend, or even a stranger, with the same level of harshness, judgment, and impatience that we so often direct toward ourselves. This inner critic is a cruel drill sergeant, constantly pointing out our flaws, reminding us of our failures, and comparing us unfavorably to others. It whispers that we are not smart enough, not successful enough, not good enough, and we listen. We believe this voice is telling us the truth, that its harshness is necessary to motivate us and keep us safe from failure. But this is a terrible lie. This constant barrage of inner criticism does not make us stronger. It makes us more anxious, more fearful of taking risks, and it slowly erodes our sense of self-worth. The practice of loving kindness is a gentle revolution against this inner tyranny. It is the conscious decision to start treating ourselves with the same kindness and understanding we would offer to a beloved friend. A modern framework for this ancient practice can be found in the work of the researcher Dr. Kristin Neff, who defines self-compassion as having three core components. The first is self-kindness. This is the active choice to be gentle with ourselves when we are suffering, failing, or feeling inadequate. It means that When you make a mistake at work, instead of the habitual response of, "I'm such an idiot," you learn to pause and offer yourself a different message. "That was a difficult situation, and I did my best. It's okay to make mistakes." It is the simple, yet radical, act of being on your own side. The second component is the recognition of our common humanity. When we fail, our inner critic often tells us a story of isolation. Everyone else has it together. I'm the only one who is this messed up. This feeling of being uniquely flawed is a source of deep shame and suffering. Common humanity is the antidote. It is the wisdom that reminds us that to be human is to be imperfect. Everyone makes mistakes. Everyone feels inadequate at times. Everyone suffers. Your personal failure is not a sign of your unique deficiency. It is a sign of your membership in the human race. This realization instantly dissolves the walls of isolation and connects you to others in a shared experience of vulnerability. The third component is mindfulness, which we have already explored. It is the ability to hold our own painful experiences in balanced awareness without either suppressing them or becoming melodramatically swept away by them. Mindfulness allows us to acknowledge our pain without over-identifying with it. We can say to ourselves, "This is a moment of suffering," which is a manageable observation, rather than getting lost in the thought, "My whole life is a disaster," which is an overwhelming catastrophe. When we combine these three elements, self-kindness, common humanity, and mindfulness, we create a powerful inner resource for navigating the challenges of life. We become our own best ally, rather than our own worst enemy. The formal method for cultivating this quality is a meditation practice known as Metta Bhavana, which translates as the development of loving kindness. It is a simple yet profound technique of planting seeds of goodwill in the heart, first for ourselves and then for others. To practice, you can find a comfortable posture, just as with mindfulness meditation. Allow yourself to settle. Then, instead of placing your attention on the breath, you gently bring your awareness to the area of your heart. You might even place a hand over your heart to help bring a sense of warmth and focus to this area. The practice begins with ourselves, because we cannot offer to others what we do not have for ourselves. You cannot pour tea from an empty pot. So, we begin by silently offering phrases of well-wishing to ourselves. The traditional phrases are, "May I be safe," "May I be happy," "May I be healthy," "May I live with ease." You repeat these phrases gently, silently, like a mantra. It is not about forcing yourself to feel a certain way. On some days, you may feel a genuine warmth and happiness as you say the words. On other days, you may feel nothing but irritation or sadness. That is perfectly okay. The practice is not in the feeling, it is in the intention. You are planting the seeds. You are setting the direction of your heart toward kindness. You simply repeat the phrases, offering yourself this unconditional wish for well-being, regardless of whether you feel you deserve it. In offering ourselves this kindness, we are living into one of the most powerful teachings of the Buddha. He once said, "You can search throughout the entire universe for someone who is more deserving of your love and affection than you are yourself. And that person is not to be found anywhere. You yourself, as much as anybody in the entire universe, deserve your love and affection." This is not a call to narcissism or selfishness. It is the recognition that self-compassion is not a luxury. It is the very foundation of a sane and wholesome life. A heart that is at war with itself cannot be a source of peace for the world. A heart that is filled with self-loathing cannot genuinely love others. By making peace with ourselves, By offering ourselves this radical gift of acceptance and kindness, we create the necessary conditions for true compassion for others to arise. Once you have spent some time offering loving kindness to yourself, you can begin to expand the circle of your goodwill. First, bring to mind a benefactor, someone who has been kind to you in your life, a teacher, a mentor, or a friend. Hold an image of them in your mind and offer them the same phrases. May you be safe. May you be happy. May you be healthy. May you live with ease. Feel the natural sense of gratitude and warmth that arises. Next, bring to mind a dear friend or a close family member. Picture them clearly and extend the same wishes for their well-being. Then, you can expand the circle to include a neutral person, someone you see often but do not have strong feelings about, like a cashier at the grocery store or a neighbor you pass on the street. Offer them the same wishes, recognizing their humanity and their own desire to be happy and free from suffering. As the practice deepens over time, you can even experiment with bringing to mind a difficult person, someone with whom you have conflict. This is an advanced practice, and it is not about condoning their actions or forcing yourself to like them. It is a radical act of freeing your own heart from the poison of hatred and resentment. It is the recognition that their harmful actions likely come from their own deep suffering. Finally, you can expand the circle to its widest possible circumference, offering these wishes to all living beings, everywhere. May all beings be safe. May all beings be happy. May all beings be healthy. May all beings live with ease. This practice of metta is a powerful balm for the anxious mind. Anxiety is often cold, contracted, and isolating. Loving kindness is warm, expansive, and connecting. It is the direct antidote. By consistently cultivating this inner warmth, we begin to change the very atmosphere of our own minds, from one of harsh judgment to one of gentle, unconditional friendliness. As our hearts begin to soften through this practice, a new capacity emerges. We find ourselves not only able to wish for the happiness of others, but also more able to be present with their pain. When our warm and gentle loving kindness encounters the reality of suffering, both our own and that of others, it transforms into a new, powerful, and active quality of the heart. This is compassion, or karuna, and it is to this profound capacity to meet suffering with a brave and open heart that we now turn. With a heart softened by the practice of loving kindness, we learn to offer ourselves and the world a gentle, unconditional friendliness. We cultivate the wish for all beings to find happiness. But life, in its boundless complexity, presents us not only with opportunities for joy, but also with the unavoidable reality of pain. When our newly softened heart, filled with the warmth of metta, encounters the raw fact of suffering, it does not turn away, it responds. This response, this movement of the heart that trembles in the face of pain and gives rise to the deep wish that this pain might end, is the essence of compassion, or karuna. If loving kindness is the wish for someone to have sunshine, compassion is the willingness to sit with them in the rain, offering an umbrella. It is the active, engaged, and courageous dimension of a heart that is truly awake. And it is a powerful antidote to the isolating nature of our own anxiety. When we are caught in the grip of anxiety, our world shrinks dramatically. Our focus narrows until it feels like our own suffering is the only real thing in the universe. We become the lead actor and sole audience member in the tragic opera of me, my, and mine. Our problems loom like mountains, casting a shadow over everything, and the suffering of others becomes distant and abstract. This state of anxious self-absorption is a deep and painful prison. It isolates us and amplifies our sense of distress. Compassion is the key that unlocks the door to this prison cell. The moment we genuinely turn our attention toward the suffering of another being, a profound shift occurs. The camera of our awareness pans out from our own personal drama to the vast, shared landscape of the human condition. When we truly listen to a friend who has lost their job, when we see the exhaustion on the face of a single parent, when we read about those facing famine or war, our own problems do not necessarily disappear, but they are placed in a much larger context. Our personal suffering is seen not as a unique affliction, but as one thread in the immense and intricate tapestry of universal dukkha. This shift in perspective is incredibly healing. It breaks the spell of self-obsession and reminds us that we are not alone. It reconnects us to the world and to the fundamental truth of our shared experience. It is important to distinguish compassion from its near relatives, pity and empathy. Pity often comes from a place of superiority. It looks down on another's suffering from a safe distance, saying, "Oh, you poor thing." Pity creates separation. Compassion, however, arises from a sense of equality. It says, "I recognize this pain. This is human suffering. We are in this together." It builds a bridge of connection, not a wall of separation. Empathy, the ability to feel what another is feeling, is the gateway to compassion. It is a vital and beautiful human capacity. However, if we only have empathy, we can become overwhelmed. To feel the world's anxiety and sorrow in our own bodies without any other tool can lead to a state of empathic distress or burnout, where we become paralyzed by the very pain we are feeling. Compassion is empathy plus an active ingredient. It adds the element of caring, the gentle but firm wish for that suffering to be alleviated. It is the movement from "I feel your pain" to "I feel your pain, and I wish for you to be free from it." This addition of active caring prevents us from drowning in the sea of suffering, and instead allows us to be a lifeline. In the Mahayana tradition of Buddhism, this limitless potential of the compassionate heart is embodied in the archetypal figure of Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva of compassion. A bodhisattva is an enlightened being who postpones their own final nirvana out of a deep vow to help all sentient beings become free from suffering. The legend says that as Avalokiteshvara looked out upon the world, they became so overwhelmed by the sheer scale of the world's pain, so moved by the cries of countless suffering beings, that their head literally shattered into 1,000 pieces. The Buddhas, seeing this incredible act of compassionate breakage, reassembled the pieces, giving Avalokiteshvara 11 heads to see the suffering in all directions and 1,000 arms to reach out and help. This powerful image is not meant to be taken literally. It is a profound metaphor for the nature of true compassion. The 1,000 arms represent the countless skillful and creative ways that compassionate action can manifest in the world. A compassionate act does not have to be a grand, heroic gesture. One of those 1,000 arms is the simple act of truly listening to someone without judgment. Another arm is offering a kind and encouraging word. Another is bringing a meal to a sick neighbor. Another is the patience to forgive a small mistake. Another is simply smiling at a stranger who looks sad. Compassion is not one single action. It is any action, no matter how small, that arises from the genuine wish to alleviate suffering. The story of Avalokiteshvara teaches us that our capacity to help is far greater and more varied than we imagine. We all have 1,000 arms. How then do we cultivate this quality in our own lives? It begins, as always, with mindfulness, the simple act of noticing suffering where it exists, both in ourselves and in others. We see the homeless person on the street not as an inconvenience, but as a human being in pain. We notice the flicker of sadness in a friend's eyes, even when they say they are fine. We acknowledge our own moments of pain with the same gentle awareness. Having noticed the suffering, we can then engage in practices that train the heart to move toward it with courage. A powerful, though advanced Tibetan practice is Tonglen, or giving and taking. In a simplified form, as you breathe in, you can imagine breathing in the pain and suffering of another person, be it the anxiety of a loved one or the sorrow of a community. You breathe it in with the sincere wish that you could take their burden from them. This act reverses our usual selfish clinging and trains us to be brave in the face of pain. Then, as you breathe out, you imagine breathing out whatever is good and peaceful within you, sending them feelings of safety, of loving kindness, of strength, and of ease. This is a profound and transformative practice for the heart. But most often, compassion is practiced off the meditation cushion, in the small interactions of our daily lives. It is about choosing kindness over being right in an argument. It is about having the patience to listen to a child's long story. It is about taking a moment to thank the bus driver or the cleaning staff. These small acts of warmth and recognition ripple outward in ways we can never fully know, transforming the day for both the giver and the receiver. And crucially, this compassionate response must also be directed inward. We must learn to offer karuna to ourselves. When we are suffering, when we are caught in anxiety or regret, we must learn to offer ourselves the same wish. May I be free from this suffering. Self-compassion is not selfish. It is the necessary foundation for sustainable compassion for others. We cannot be a source of strength and relief for others if we are constantly depleting our own inner resources through harsh self-judgment. To be compassionate to ourselves means to allow ourselves time to rest, to forgive ourselves for our mistakes, and to acknowledge our own pain with the same tenderness we would offer to anyone else we loved. Compassion, then, is the ultimate expression of our interconnectedness. It breaks the lonely spell of anxious self-obsession and reminds us that our own liberation is deeply intertwined with the liberation of all beings. It is the heart's brave and beautiful response to the first noble truth, the truth of suffering. We have now explored the practical arts of the heart, the clear seeing of mindfulness, the warm friendliness of metta, and the active caring of karuna. These practices change our fundamental relationship to the reality of our experience. Now, to truly solidify this freedom, we will venture into one of the most profound and liberating philosophical insights of Buddhism. We will explore a concept that, when even partially understood, can dissolve the very foundation of our clinging and anxiety at its root. We turn now to the deep wisdom of emptiness, or sunyata. We have journeyed into the heart, learning to meet our experience with the clear sight of mindfulness, the warmth of loving kindness, and the active care of compassion. These are the great practices that soften our relationship to the world. Now, to truly uproot the deepest sources of our anxiety, we must venture beyond practice alone and into the realm of wisdom. We must be willing to investigate the very nature of our own self and the world it inhabits. This investigation leads us to what is perhaps the most profound and often most misunderstood concept in all of Buddhist thought, the teaching of sunyata, or emptiness. The word itself can sound frightening to the Western ear. It can conjure images of a cold, meaningless void, a nihilistic abyss. But, in the context of this path, emptiness is not nothingness. It is the very key to unlocking radical freedom, boundless compassion, and a peace that is not dependent on circumstances. It is a teaching, not of absence, but of a radical and vibrant fullness. To understand emptiness, we must first ask what things are empty of. They are empty of a separate, independent, isolated existence. Nothing in the entire universe exists on its own, from its own side, without depending on anything else. Everything arises in relationship to everything else. Consider a flower in a garden. We look at it and label it flower, and our mind creates the impression of a distinct, separate object. But let us look more deeply. Can this flower exist without the sunshine that provides the energy for its growth? Number. So the sun is a part of the flower. Can it exist without the clouds that provide the rain? Number. So the clouds are a part of the flower. Can it exist without the rich soil, the earthworms that aerate the soil, and the microorganisms within it? Number. So the earth, the worms, and the microbes are all a part of the flower. The flower is made entirely of non-flower elements. If we were to remove the sun, the clouds, the soil, and the rain, there would be no flower left. It is empty of a separate, self-sufficient identity. Its being is a temporary, beautiful manifestation of the entire cosmos. The Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh taught this profound insight with the simple example of a sheet of paper. He would invite his students to look deeply at a sheet of paper and to see the cloud floating in it. This sounds poetic, but it is a literal truth. Without a cloud, there can be no rain. Without rain, the trees cannot grow. And without trees, we cannot make paper. So the cloud is an essential part of the paper. If you return the cloud to the sky, the sheet of paper cannot exist. Then, he would invite us to see the sunshine in the paper. The sunshine is the source of all life on Earth, and it is the energy that allows the tree to grow through photosynthesis. If you remove the sunshine, the tree dies, and the sheet of paper is impossible. So the sunshine is also in the paper. Continuing this contemplation, we can see the logger who cut down the tree. We can see his parents, who gave him life. We can see the wheat in the bread he ate for breakfast, which was grown by a farmer, who also needed the sun and the rain. We can see the person who works in the paper mill, and the truck driver who delivered the paper to the store. The entire web of life, the whole of human economy and history, is present in this single sheet of paper. It is empty of a separate, independent existence as paper. It is full of the entire universe. This is the teaching of interbeing. Nothing can be by itself alone. It can only interbe with everything else. Now, let us turn this powerful lens of investigation upon ourselves. We have a strong, instinctual feeling of being a separate me. We feel that we are the thinker of our thoughts, the feeler of our feelings, an independent entity inside this skin, looking out at a separate world. But is this really true? Let us look deeply. Who are you? You are, in part, your parents, your grandparents, and the long, unbroken chain of your ancestors. Their DNA is your DNA. Their history is part of your story. You are the food you have eaten, the vegetables, the fruits, the grains, all brought to you by the sun, the rain, the soil, and the work of countless farmers and laborers. Right now, in this very moment, you are the air you are breathing, a seamless exchange with the atmosphere of the entire planet. Your thoughts are shaped by the language you speak, a language that was created by millions of people over thousands of years. The ideas in your head, the beliefs you hold dear, have come to you from books, from teachers, from your culture. You are a product of your education, your friendships, your heartbreaks. If we were to take away all of these non-you elements, what would be left? If we took away your ancestors, your food, the air, your language, and your culture, where would the you that you think you are be found? The conclusion is the same as for the flower and the sheet of paper. The solid, separate self we believe in so strongly is an illusion. We are empty of a separate, independent existence. We are a nexus, a temporary, ever-changing pattern, a verb, not a noun. We are a manifestation of the entire universe experiencing itself. This is not a frightening thought. It is the most liberating thought imaginable. This is why emptiness is the ultimate antidote to anxiety. Anxiety is the product of a separate self, the ego, trying to protect and perpetuate itself in a world of change. It is the fear of a separate me, losing what it has, or not getting what it wants. But if there is no solid, separate me to begin with, who is there to be anxious? Who is there to be threatened? When we understand our interconnectedness, our interbeing, the ego's desperate project of self-preservation begins to lose its power. Worries about my reputation become less compelling when we see that our reputation is a collective creation. Fears about my success or my failure begin to dissolve when we see that all our actions are the result of countless causes and conditions, and that their fruits belong to the whole web of life, not just to a separate me. Furthermore, this wisdom is the true source of boundless compassion. When the illusion of a separate self dissolves, the barrier between me and you becomes transparent. We see that your suffering is not separate from my suffering. The pollution of the river is not separate from the water in my body. The joy of another is not separate from my own potential for joy. We are all expressions of the same interdependent reality. Harming another is, in a very real sense, harming ourselves. Helping another is helping ourselves. Compassion is no longer just a nice moral idea. It becomes the most logical, natural, and intelligent way to live. It is the heart's spontaneous response to the recognition of our shared being. So, emptiness is not a cold void. It is a warm, vibrant, and relational space. It is the space of total possibility. Because a seed is empty of a separate self, it can be full of the potential for a mighty tree. Because we are empty of a fixed, solid self, we are full of the potential for limitless growth, change, and compassion. This profound insight that we are with all of life is not meant to be merely a philosophical concept to be debated. It is a living reality to be experienced directly. But where can we have this direct experience? Where can we feel our connection to the sunshine, the clouds, and the entire web of existence? There is only one time and one place where this is possible. It is right here, right now, in the present moment. To truly feel the freedom of emptiness, we must learn to fully inhabit the only point where the entire universe converges, the sacred and powerful space of the here and now. We turn, therefore, to the practice and the power of living in the present moment. Having explored the liberating wisdom of emptiness, we come to see that our true nature is not one of separation, but of profound interconnection with the whole of life. We are not isolated islands, but waves in a single, vast ocean of being. This understanding is not merely a philosophical idea, it is a living reality. But where can this reality be directly felt and experienced? There is only one place, and it is the place we so rarely inhabit. It is not in the ghost-filled halls of the past, nor in the hazy, imagined landscapes of the future. Our true home, the only place where life actually unfolds, the only place where peace can be found, is in the vibrant, immediate, and sacred space of the present moment. Yet for most of us, this home is a place we visit only as a fleeting tourist. Our minds have been conditioned to live elsewhere. The mind, by its very nature, tends to live in one of two imaginary worlds, the past or the future. The past is a realm constructed entirely of memory. We spend countless hours wandering its corridors, rereading old letters of regret, polishing trophies of past achievements, or picking at the scabs of old wounds. When we are lost in thought about what happened yesterday or last year, we are living in a ghost world. The events are gone. The people may have changed, but we keep the phantoms alive with the energy of our own attention. While we are engrossed in this mental movie of what was, the real, tangible, living world in front of us passes by completely unnoticed. We miss the taste of our food, the sound of a loved one's voice, the feeling of the sun on our skin, because we are not here to receive these gifts. We are ghosts, haunting the houses of our own history. The other imaginary world our mind loves to inhabit is the future. This is a realm constructed of fantasy, projection, and planning. It is the land of what if. What if I succeed? What if I fail? What if I get sick? What if they leave me? This constant projection into the future is the very lifeblood of anxiety. Anxiety, by its nature, is a future-oriented state. It cannot survive in the naked reality of the present. Think about it. You cannot be anxious about a presentation next week while you are fully and completely absorbed in the physical sensation of warm water flowing over your hands. The thought about the presentation may arise, but if your awareness is anchored in the direct, sensory experience of now, the feeling of anxiety has no oxygen. It requires the fuel of future projection to burn. When we are lost in worry, we are practicing for a life that has not yet happened, rehearsing for tragedies that may never occur, all while the curtain is up on the only life we actually have. The practice of returning to the present moment is therefore the most direct and powerful antidote to anxiety. It is the act of consciously choosing to leave the imaginary worlds of past and future and to land back in the reality of our own body and senses. Our five senses are the sacred gateways to the now. They only operate in the present. You cannot see yesterday. You can only see what is in front of your eyes right now. You cannot hear tomorrow. You can only hear the sounds that are arising in this moment. To come home, all we need to do is to drop out of the noisy, thinking mind and into the quiet wisdom of the senses. You can do this at any time, in any place. Take a moment right now. Notice 5 different things you can see in your immediate environment. Don't label them or judge them. Simply notice their color, their shape, their texture. Now, close your eyes and listen. What are 4 things you can hear? The distant hum of traffic, the sound of your own breathing, the ticking of a clock. Let the sounds wash over you. Now, notice 3 things you can feel. The sensation of your feet on the floor, the texture of your clothing against your skin, the temperature of the air on your hands or face. Next, notice 2 things you can smell, or 1 thing you can taste. Perhaps the lingering taste of your last meal or drink. This simple practice, which takes less than a minute, is a powerful circuit breaker for the anxious mind. It yanks your awareness out of the realm of abstract thought and anchors it firmly in the tangible reality of the here and now. In the here and now, there is no anxiety, there is only sensation. There is a famous Zen story that beautifully illustrates this point. A student, earnest and full of ambition, came to a great Zen master and asked, "Master, what is enlightenment? What is the secret to finding ultimate peace?" The master looked at him and replied simply, "When I am hungry, I eat. When I am tired, I sleep. The student was deeply disappointed. He said, "But isn't that what everyone does? How is that enlightenment?" The master smiled and said, "Number, when most people eat, they are not truly eating. They are thinking of 1,000 other things. They are worrying about their work. They are planning their evening. They are lost in thought. When most people sleep, they are not truly sleeping. They are wrestling with the ghosts of yesterday and the fears of tomorrow. When I eat, I just eat. When I sleep, I just sleep." The profound secret is this: peace is not found in some mystical, far-off state. It is found in the radical act of being fully present for the totality of your ordinary life. It is the art of doing one thing at a time. When you are walking, just walk. When you are listening, just listen. When you are holding your child, just hold your child. Our modern culture teaches us to do the opposite. It tells us that happiness is always just around the corner. It is in the next purchase, the next promotion, the next vacation, the next relationship. We live our lives in a state of perpetual waiting for the good part to start. We treat the present moment as a mere stepping stone to a better future, something to be endured or rushed through on our way to somewhere else. But the future never arrives. There is only ever a succession of present moments. By constantly chasing a future happiness, we miss the only life we will ever have. The practice of presence is the act of stepping off this frantic treadmill. It is the realization that this moment, right now, is not a dress rehearsal. This is the main event. The peace we seek is available right now in the simple miracle of our own breath, in the warmth of a sunbeam, in the taste of a glass of water. This practice also offers us a profound sense of freedom. When we are truly living in the present moment, the past loses its power. The person you were 1 minute ago is gone forever. Their mistakes are not your mistakes. Their story is not your story. This very breath is a new beginning. This moment is a clean slate. You are not defined by your history. You are defined by your presence. Each moment is an invitation to begin again, free from the heavy chains of what has been. The present moment is our only true refuge. It is the only place we can be safe from the regrets of the past and the fears of the findings in all its fullness. However, as we attempt to rest in this peaceful harbor of the now, we often feel a powerful current pulling us away, the current of expectation, the relentless inner pressure to strive, to achieve, and to become something more. To find true ease in the present, we must now learn the gentle art of releasing our attachment to outcomes and finding our joy not in the destination, but in the journey itself. Having learned to anchor ourselves in the only true home we have, the present moment, we encounter a powerful and persistent force that constantly tries to pull us away. It is the force of expectation. Even as we try to rest in the here and now, the mind leaps forward, attaching our sense of peace and well-being to a future condition, a desired outcome. We find ourselves living in a state of perpetual anticipation, a state governed by the quiet, anxious whisper of what if and the tantalizing promise of when. This habit of staking our present happiness on a future result is one of the most subtle and pervasive sources of our stress. To find true ease in the present, we must learn the gentle but radical art of releasing our expectations and finding our joy not in the destination, but in the journey itself. Most of us are intimately familiar with what we might call the "I'll be happy when" syndrome. It is the dominant operating system of the modern mind. I'll be happy when this stressful work project is finally over. I'll be able to relax when I get through this difficult week. My life will finally be good when I lose 20 pounds, when I find a partner, when I buy a house, when my kids are grown. This way of thinking turns our entire life into a waiting room. The present moment ceases to be a place to live, and instead becomes a mere obstacle to be overcome, a stepping stone to a perpetually receding future where we imagine our peace awaits. The tragic irony is that even if we achieve the thing we were waiting for, the mind, by its very habit, will quickly create a new when. After the project is done, we'll be happy when the next one is finished. After we buy the house, we'll be happy when it's fully furnished. This is a recipe for lifelong dissatisfaction, a game that can never be won. We are constantly chasing a horizon that moves with us, forever deferring our right to be at peace. The fundamental flaw in this approach is that the outcomes of our actions are largely outside of our direct control. We have control over our intentions, our efforts, our attitude, and the quality of our work. But the final result depends on 1,000 other variables: the actions of other people, the state of the economy, hidden circumstances, and simple luck. To attach our inner peace to something as unstable and unpredictable as a future outcome is to build our house on shifting sand. It is a guaranteed path to anxiety because we are constantly trying to control the uncontrollable. We are betting our well-being on a horse race we have no power over. The wisdom of non-attachment offers a different way. It is the practice of pouring our full energy, creativity, and passion into the action itself, while simultaneously releasing our emotional grip on the fruits of that action. It is the art of working with excellence and dedication, but finding our fulfillment in the work itself, rather than in the applause, the payment, or the promotion that may or may not follow. The classic metaphor for this practice comes from the tradition of Zen archery. For the novice archer, the mind is fixed entirely on the target. The goal is the bullseye, the outcome. Their body is tense with the pressure to succeed. Their mind is filled with the fear of failure. Their entire being is contracted around this one desired result. The Zen master archer, however, has a different goal. For the master, the goal is not the destination of the arrow, but the perfection of the process. The goal is the seamless harmony between the archer, the bow, the arrow, and the breath. It is the experience of complete presence in the act of drawing the string, the moment of absolute stillness before the release, and the clean, selfless letting go as the arrow flies. Hitting the center of the target is not the primary objective. It is simply the natural byproduct of a process that is in perfect harmony. If the arrow should miss, there is no anger or frustration, only a calm, inquisitive look back at the process to see where the harmony was momentarily lost. This is a profound lesson for our own lives. We can choose to be the anxious novice, obsessed with the target of our goals, or we can choose to be the master, finding our peace and our fulfillment in the graceful execution of the process itself. Whether we are writing a report, having a difficult conversation, creating a piece of art, or raising a child, the peace is always available in the doing, not in the getting. To make this shift from being destination-focused to process-oriented, we can begin by consciously redefining what success means to us. Instead of defining a successful day as one where we accomplished everything on our to-do list, we could redefine it as a day where we brought presence and integrity to each task we undertook. Instead of seeing a successful negotiation as one where we got everything we wanted, we could see it as one where we remained calm, listened deeply, and communicated authentically, regardless of the outcome. We must learn to distinguish between what we can control and what we cannot. We can control our input, our preparation, our effort, our attitude. We cannot control the output. The wise practice is to focus all our energy on making our input excellent and then to let go, allowing the results to unfold as they will. This is an act of trust, a release of the burden of needing to manage the entire universe. We can also train ourselves to find the intrinsic joy in the process itself. We can learn to notice the small moments of satisfaction that are always available, the pleasure of solving a complex problem, the feeling of connection in a collaborative meeting, the simple physical joy of a body moving through exercise. When we stop seeing our work as a mere means to an end, a paycheck or a promotion, we can begin to discover the inherent dignity and reward in the work itself. This does not mean we will become apathetic or lazy. In fact, the opposite is often true. The anxiety born from a fear of failure is a terrible motivator. It leads to procrastination, perfectionism, and burnout. When we are free from the crushing weight of having to produce a certain outcome, we are liberated to be more creative, more courageous, and more willing to take risks. Our motivation shifts from a place of fear to a place of genuine interest and enjoyment, a far more sustainable and powerful source of energy. By releasing our rigid expectations, we are not giving up on our dreams. We are giving up the stress and anxiety that so often prevent us from achieving them. We are freeing ourselves to engage with our lives more fully, more gracefully, and more peacefully. We reclaim our life from a hypothetical future and root it in the fertile soil of the present-day journey. This practice of letting go of our attachment to specific outcomes is a profound relief. It prepares us to face an even deeper and more fundamental aspect of the human condition. It is one thing to release our desire for a particular result, but how do we learn to be at peace with the far greater reality that we simply do not know what tomorrow will bring at all? To find the deepest and most unshakable peace, we must learn to stop fighting and instead begin to befriend the great, unknowable mystery of the future. As we learn to release our tight grip on specific outcomes, we experience a profound sense of relief. The pressure begins to ease. We find a new freedom and joy in the process of living, rather than constantly striving for a destination. This practice, however, leads us to confront a deeper and more fundamental layer of our anxiety. It is one thing to let go of our attachment to a particular goal, but it is another thing entirely to face the raw, naked truth that we do not and cannot know what the future holds. This is the great abyss of uncertainty, the ultimate fear that drives the ego's relentless project of control. The mind, in its desperate search for security, craves predictability. It wants a guarantee, a signed contract with the universe stating that everything will be okay. But life offers no such contract. The very nature of existence is change, flux, and unpredictability. To be at war with uncertainty is to be at war with the very fabric of life itself. To find the deepest and most unshakable peace, the kind of peace that allows for restful sleep in a chaotic world, we must learn to stop fighting this war. We must learn to befriend and even embrace the great and beautiful mystery of the unknown. Our mind can be understood as a magnificent control machine, a survival mechanism that has evolved over millennia to anticipate threats and solve problems. It is constantly running simulations, creating endless what-if scenarios in an attempt to prepare for every possible contingency. This is the very definition of worry. The mind operates like a frantic chess master, trying to calculate every possible move and countermove in a game that is infinitely complex, where the rules are constantly changing and where we can never truly know the other player's strategy. This is an impossible and utterly exhausting task. The silent hum of anxiety that underscores so many of our lives is the sound of this machine working overtime, burning out its own circuits in a futile quest for a certainty that will never arrive. The first step toward peace is the courageous admission that we are not in control. We can have influence, we can have intentions, we can make wise choices, but we cannot control the vast, interconnected web of causes and conditions that will shape tomorrow. This admission is not a sign of defeat or weakness. It is a sign of profound wisdom. It is the moment we stop arguing with reality and begin to align ourselves with the way life actually is. There is an ancient Taoist story that illustrates this wisdom with simple and timeless grace. An old farmer lived in a small village with his son. His only material possession of value was a beautiful horse. One day, the horse ran away. The farmer's neighbors all came to console him. "What terrible luck," they said. "Your only horse is gone." The farmer simply shrugged and replied, "Good luck, bad luck, who can say?" A week later, the horse returned, and it was not alone. It had brought with it a herd of wild horses from the mountains. The neighbors gathered again, this time to congratulate him. "What incredible good luck," they exclaimed. "Now you are a wealthy man." The farmer calmly replied, "Good luck, bad luck, who can say?" The next day, the farmer's son was trying to tame one of the wild horses when he was thrown off, and his leg was badly broken. The neighbors came once more, shaking their heads. "What awful luck," they lamented. "Your only son is now crippled." The farmer, looking at his son's bandaged leg, replied as before, "Good luck, bad luck, who can say?" A few weeks later, the emperor's army marched into the village, conscripting every able-bodied young man for a brutal war from which few would return. The farmer's son, because of his broken leg, was the only young man in the village to be spared. The wisdom of the farmer is the wisdom of embracing uncertainty. He understood that life is far too complex and interconnected for our limited minds to label events as definitively good or bad. He saw that every event is just one link in a vast, unfolding chain of causes and effects. A seeming disaster may contain the hidden seed of a great blessing, and a seeming stroke of fortune may lead to an unforeseen tragedy. The farmer's peace did not come from knowing the future. It came from his release from the need to know it. He lived in a state of open, patient curiosity, rather than one of anxious prediction and control. This is the state of mind we can cultivate. We can learn to hold our own life stories with the same gentle, non-judgmental awareness, trusting that we cannot possibly see the whole picture from where we stand. This does not mean we should abandon all planning and drift through life aimlessly. The wisdom of embracing uncertainty is not an invitation to irresponsibility. We can and should make plans. We can set intentions and work toward our goals. The key is to hold these plans lightly, with flexibility. Think of a master sailor. The sailor has a destination in mind and a planned route on their chart, but they are not rigidly attached to that initial plan. Their eyes are constantly on the present moment reality, on the direction of the wind, the strength of the currents, the color of the sky. They are ready, at a moment's notice, to adjust their sails, to change their course, to respond wisely to the conditions as they are, not as they wish them to be. This is how we can learn to navigate our lives. We plan, but we do so with the humility of knowing that our plans are just a provisional sketch, and that life itself will have the final say. We learn to dance with reality, rather than trying to chain it to our will. To support ourselves in this dance, we can cultivate a quality known in Sanskrit as Shraddha. This is often translated as faith, but it is not a blind belief in a dogma or an external deity. It is a deep and growing trust. It is, first, a trust in the process of life itself. the farmer's quiet confidence that things will unfold as they need to. But more importantly, it is a trust in ourselves. It is the cultivation of a deep, inner knowing that we have the resources to meet whatever life brings. It is the faith that, when challenges arise, we will be able to access our own wellspring of wisdom, our own capacity for compassion, our own resilience, and our own courage. This is the ultimate security. True security is not found in a bank account, in a job title, or in a predictable future. True security is an inner capacity. It is the unshakable confidence that you can handle the unknown. When you have this inner trust, the need to control the outer world begins to fall away. You no longer need the universe to be predictable because you have faith in your own ability to be adaptable. The peace that allows for deep, restful sleep, then, is not the peace of a problem-free future. It is not the peace of certainty. It is the peace of a mind that has made friends with uncertainty. It is the quiet confidence of a heart that has stopped demanding answers and has instead learned to live in the beauty of the question. It is the freedom that comes from letting go of the helm and trusting that we have what it takes to navigate the winds and the waves, wherever they may lead. To help us navigate this unpredictable sea, it is wise to build our vessel well, to make it simple, sturdy, and unburdened by unnecessary weight. Often, our anxiety is amplified by the sheer complexity we have created in our own lives. To find this inner stability, we can now turn to the profound and calming wisdom of simplicity and the practice of letting go of our attachment to the material world. As we learn to dance with the great uncertainty of life, to release our need for control and to trust in our own resilience, we begin to feel a new sense of ease. This ease, however, can be difficult to maintain if our lives are built upon a foundation of excessive complexity. We live in a culture that constantly whispers a seductive promise, the promise that happiness, security, and self-worth can be found in the accumulation of more. More money, more possessions, more status, more experiences. We are taught to believe that an empty space in our lives is a problem to be solved, a void to be filled with the next purchase, the next activity, the next stimulation. And so we build lives of great intricacy, surrounding ourselves with things, filling our calendars to the brim, and inundating our minds with information. Then, we wonder why we feel so anxious. We are like spiders, frantically trying to maintain a vast and complicated web, and we live in constant fear that a single thread might break. The wisdom of all contemplative traditions offers a powerful antidote to this modern affliction, the radical and deeply calming path of simplicity. The pursuit of more comes with a hidden and heavy psychological price tag. First, there is the stress of acquisition, the pressure to work longer hours, to take on more responsibility, to compete in a relentless race for the resources needed to buy the things we are told will make us happy. We trade our precious time, our life energy, for objects that promise fulfillment, but rarely deliver it for long. Then comes the stress of maintenance. The things we own end up owning us. Our possessions require our time, our energy, and our money to be cleaned, organized, stored, insured, and repaired. The large house that was meant to be a sanctuary becomes a source of endless chores and financial pressure. The new car that promised freedom becomes a source of worry about scratches, theft, and costly repairs. Our things, which were supposed to serve us, become our demanding and unforgiving masters. Perhaps the heaviest cost of all is the fear of loss. The more we accumulate, the more we have to lose, and therefore, the more we have to worry about. Our possessions become anchors of anxiety. We worry about the stock market, We worry about our property values. We worry about our things becoming obsolete or breaking down. This fear creates a low-grade, chronic tension in our lives, a constant sense of needing to protect and defend our material fortress. And for what? The pleasure we derive from new possessions is notoriously fleeting. The thrill of a new phone or a new pair of shoes fades quickly, and we are soon left with a sense of emptiness, needing the next purchase, the next hit, to feel that fleeting sense of excitement. Again, this is the hedonic treadmill, a cycle of desire and disappointment that can never lead to lasting peace. The story of the Buddha's life offers the most powerful illustration of this truth. As Prince Siddhartha, he was born into a world of unimaginable material abundance. He had everything a person could possibly desire: palaces for every season, the finest silks, exquisite food, and constant entertainment designed to shield him from any hint of suffering. He lived at the very pinnacle of materialistic success. Yet, in the midst of this perfect world of more, he felt a profound spiritual emptiness, a deep and unsettling sense that something essential was missing. His journey to enlightenment was not a journey of addition, but one of radical subtraction. He renounced his kingdom, his wealth, and his status. He walked away from the palace and all its comforts, and went out into the world with nothing more than a simple cloth robe and an empty wooden bowl. It was in this state of profound simplicity that he found what all the wealth in the world could not give him: a state of complete liberation and unshakable peace. His empty bowl became a symbol not of poverty, but of ultimate freedom, the freedom from wanting. He taught us that true wealth is not measured by the abundance of our possessions, but by the simplicity of our wants. To embrace simplicity in our own lives is not about embracing deprivation or poverty. It is about a conscious and joyful act of letting go of the non-essential in order to create space for what truly matters. It is a practice of curating our lives with intention and wisdom. We can begin with our physical environment. Most of us live in homes filled with clutter, with objects we no longer use, need, or love. Each of these objects takes up not only physical space, but mental space. The act of decluttering, of going through our closets, our garages, and our digital files, and consciously letting go of what no longer serves us, is a powerful form of meditation. As we clear our physical space, we find that our mental space begins to clear as well. An uncluttered home helps to create an uncluttered mind. The goal is not to live in an empty, sterile environment, but to surround ourselves only with things that are either genuinely useful or genuinely beautiful, things that support a life of peace rather than a life of stress. This practice of simplification extends beyond our material possessions. Many of us have calendars that are just as cluttered as our closets. We overcommit ourselves, saying yes to every request and opportunity out of a sense of obligation or a fear of missing out. This leaves us feeling frantic, rushed, and perpetually exhausted. Simplicity of schedule means learning the graceful art of saying no. It means prioritizing our well-being and consciously scheduling empty space into our days. Time for rest, for quiet contemplation, for unplanned, spontaneous being. It is in these empty spaces that our creativity and our intuition can finally be heard. We must also consider simplicity of mind. We live in an age of information overload, constantly consuming a diet of news, social media, and entertainment that leaves our minds in a state of perpetual agitation. Mental simplicity means becoming a conscious curator of our information intake. It means choosing silence over constant noise, choosing a walk in nature over scrolling through a newsfeed, choosing to read a single deep book rather than skimming 100 superficial articles. It is about protecting the quiet sanctuary of our own mind. By embracing simplicity in our possessions, our schedules, and our minds, we begin to discover what constitutes true wealth. True wealth is having the time to have a long, unhurried conversation with a friend. It is the richness of a quiet mind, free from the constant chatter of wanting and worrying. It is the priceless treasure of a deep and intimate connection with the natural world. It is the freedom to pursue our passions without the crushing weight of financial pressure. These are the riches that a complicated, cluttered life so often obscures. Simplifying our outer world is a powerful and direct method for calming our inner world. It creates the spaciousness, the stillness, and the groundedness that are the necessary preconditions for deep and restorative rest. As we begin to clear away the clutter, both external and internal, we create the ideal environment for peace to take root and flourish. This newfound quiet is especially precious as the activity of the day begins to wind down and we prepare for the night. The way we end our day has a profound and direct impact on the quality of our sleep. We now turn to the practical and gentle art of creating simple, mindful rituals that can help us transition gracefully from the busyness of our day to the deep, healing peace of the night. As we learn to simplify our lives, clearing away the clutter from our homes and our minds, we begin to cultivate an inner environment of spaciousness and calm. This inner stillness is the fertile ground from which true rest can grow. A peaceful night's sleep is not an isolated event that we can force into existence the moment our head hits the pillow. It is the natural harvest of a mind that has been tended with care throughout the day, and especially in the gentle hours that precede the night. We cannot spend our days sowing the seeds of stress, distraction, and agitation, and then expect to reap a harvest of deep tranquility when the sun goes down. To find restful sleep, we must become wise and patient gardeners of our own consciousness, understanding that the quality of our night is born from the quality of our evening. In our modern world, we have developed habits that are profoundly hostile to rest. The evening, which should be a time of gentle unwinding, has become just another extension of our busy, productive day. We finish work emails late into the night. We scroll endlessly through social media feeds designed to provoke outrage and envy, and we consume intense, dramatic entertainment that floods our nervous systems with adrenaline and cortisol. Then, we switch off the lights and wonder why our minds refuse to be quiet. This is like sprinting a marathon and expecting your heart rate to return to a resting state 1 second after you cross the finish line. The mind and body simply do not work that way. They require a period of transition, a gentle cool down, a buffer zone between the world of doing and the world of being. The last hour or two before you intend to sleep is a sacred time. It is an opportunity to consciously create a ritual that signals to your entire system that it is time to let go, to soften, and to prepare for the healing journey of sleep. The first, and perhaps most crucial phase of this evening ritual is what we might call the digital sunset. At least 1 hour, and ideally 90 minutes, before bedtime, we must make a conscious decision to disconnect from the world of glowing screens. This is essential for both physiological and psychological reasons. The blue light emitted by our phones, tablets, and computers directly interferes with our brain's production of melatonin, the hormone that regulates our sleep-wake cycles. But just as importantly, the content we consume on these devices is the very opposite of restful. News cycles are designed to create a sense of urgency and anxiety. Social media is a carefully curated highlight reel that often triggers feelings of comparison and inadequacy. Work emails keep our minds tethered to the problems and pressures of our job. To invite sleep, we must first politely ask these agitating guests to leave. This means creating a firm boundary. Put your phone to charge in another room, not on your bedside table. Turn off all notifications. Make a clear and compassionate commitment to yourself that this last hour of the day belongs to you and your peace, not to the demands of the digital world. The second phase of our ritual involves gently discharging the accumulated tensions of the day. When we finally lie down in the silence, all the unprocessed thoughts, worries, and to-do lists that we have been pushing aside during the day begin to bubble up to the surface. Our mind becomes a frantic rehearsal hall for tomorrow's anxieties. A powerful practice to counteract this is to use a worry journal. Set aside 5 to 10 minutes with a simple notebook and pen. During this time, write down everything that is on your mind. Create a to-do list for the next day, so your mind doesn't have to keep juggling it. Write down the worries that are circling in your head. Articulate the unresolved conversations. The goal is not to solve these problems, but simply to externalize them, to get them out of the echo chamber of your mind and onto the physical page. Once you feel you have emptied out the day's mental clutter, the most important step is to close the notebook. This is a powerful symbolic act. It is a gesture to your mind that says, "I have heard you. I have acknowledged your concerns. They are now safely held on this page, and we do not need to attend to them again until morning. For now, your work is done." This simple act can provide an incredible sense of release and closure. Now that we have disconnected from external stimulation and discharged our internal chatter, we can move into the third phase, which is to gently engage our senses and ground ourselves in the present moment. This is about shifting from the agitated, thinking mind to the calm, feeling body. There is no single right way to do this. The key is to choose a simple, soothing activity and to perform it with mindful attention. You might prepare a cup of caffeine-free herbal tea. As you do, pay attention to the whole process. Listen to the sound of the water boiling. Watch the steam rise. Feel the warmth of the mug in your hands. Inhale the aroma. As you drink, taste each sip fully, without any other distraction. Alternatively, you could take a warm bath or shower, not as a quick chore, but as a sensory meditation, feeling the water on your skin and letting it wash away the tensions of the day. You could do a few minutes of very gentle, slow stretching, paying close attention to the sensations in your muscles. You could listen to calming, instrumental music, or you could read a few pages from a physical book, preferably one that is contemplative, poetic, or inspiring, rather than a suspenseful thriller. The activity itself is less important than the quality of attention you bring to it. The goal is to soothe the nervous system and anchor your awareness in the simple, peaceful reality of the present. The final phase of our ritual takes place once we are in bed, ready for sleep. The last thoughts and feelings we cultivate before we drift off can have a profound effect on the quality of our rest. We want to consciously plant seeds of peace in the garden of the mind. Two simple and beautiful practices can help with this. The first is a gratitude practice. Lying in the dark, mentally review your day and identify 3 simple things for which you are genuinely grateful. They do not need to be monumental. It could be the taste of your morning coffee, a moment of laughter with a colleague, the beauty of the sunset, or the comfort of your own bed. Gratitude is a powerful antidote to anxiety, as it shifts the mind from a perspective of lack and fear to one of abundance and appreciation. The second practice is to offer yourself a few rounds of loving-kindness meditation. Silently repeat the phrases, "May I be safe," "May I be happy," "May I be healthy," "May I live with ease." Feel the gentle wish for your own well-being, permeating your body and mind, creating a sense of inner safety and peace. By practicing these rituals, we become the wise gardener of our own mind. The digital sunset is like putting away the noisy power tools for the day. The worry journal is like carefully pulling the weeds of anxiety. The mindful sensory activity is like gently watering the plants. And the final practice of gratitude, or loving kindness, is like adding rich, nourishing compost to the soil. By tending to our inner garden in this way, we create the perfect conditions for the beautiful and delicate flower of restful sleep to bloom naturally, in its own time, without force or struggle. These rituals are not a magic formula, but a practice of deep self-care. But what happens when, even with the most careful preparation, we find ourselves lying awake in the dead of night? What is the wise response when the guest of sleep refuses our invitation? The final layer of this practice is to learn how to apply the wisdom of acceptance to the very experience of sleeplessness itself. We have cultivated our inner garden with care, simplifying our lives and creating gentle evening rituals to invite the guest of sleep. But sometimes, despite our best preparations, the guest does not arrive or departs in the middle of the night. You find yourself suddenly awake. The clock on the wall glows with an unwelcome truth. It is 3 in the morning, and with the awareness of being awake comes a familiar and dreaded companion, a wave of panic. The inner critic immediately begins its frantic monologue. "Oh no, not again. I'll be exhausted tomorrow. I won't be able to function at work. My whole day will be ruined. Why does this always happen to me? I have to get back to sleep right now." This panic, this second arrow of catastrophic thinking, is the true enemy of rest. The problem is not the simple fact of being awake. The problem is our violent resistance to it. The path to peace in the dead of night, therefore, is not found in a desperate struggle to force sleep to return, but in a radical and compassionate acceptance of the moment as it is. The first and most powerful step is to consciously reframe the experience. Instead of viewing this period of wakefulness as a disaster, what if we could see it as a gift? In our noisy, overstimulated world, when are we ever offered a period of absolute silence and solitude, with no demands on our time, no emails to answer, no one needing anything from us? These pre-dawn hours can be seen as a secret, sacred time, an unexpected opportunity for quiet practice and introspection. By simply shifting our attitude from "this is a catastrophe" to "this is an opportunity for quiet," we instantly drain the situation of its power to create suffering. We may not be able to choose to be asleep, but we can absolutely choose not to be in a state of panic about being awake. This reframe does not magically make us drowsy, but it does something far more important. It brings us peace. Trying to force yourself to fall asleep is like trying to hold a handful of water. The more desperately you clench your fist, the more you struggle and strain, the faster the water slips through your fingers. The struggle itself is what defeats the purpose. But if you can relax your hand, if you can open your palm and create a gentle, receptive cup, the water can rest there, still and calm. Sleep is like that water. It is a state of surrender, of letting go. It cannot be seized by an act of will. It arrives only when we open the hand of the mind, when we let go of the struggle and allow ourselves to be held by the quiet of the night. All of the practices that follow are simply different ways of gently opening that hand. The simplest practice of all can be done without even moving. As you lie there in the darkness, simply return your attention to the anchor of the breath. Feel the subtle sensation of the air entering your nostrils. Feel the gentle rise of your chest or abdomen, and the gentle fall on the out-breath. Notice the feeling of the blankets on your skin, the weight of your head on the pillow. The goal here is not to meditate yourself to sleep. That is just another form of striving. The goal is simply to rest your awareness in the physical sensations of the present moment. If thoughts arise, as they surely will, see them as clouds passing in the night sky of your mind. Acknowledge them gently, thinking, and then kindly escort your attention back to the breath. The intention is not to achieve sleep, but to achieve rest. If sleep comes, it comes as a welcome byproduct of this restful presence. And if it does not, you are still giving your body and mind a profound gift, the gift of quiet, non-striving rest. A deeper and more powerful practice to do while lying in bed is the body scan meditation. Here, you will take a slow, systematic journey through your own body with your awareness. Begin by bringing your attention all the way down to the toes of your left foot. You don't have to wiggle them, just feel them. Notice whatever sensations are present, perhaps warmth, coolness, tingling, or even a lack of sensation. There is no right or wrong way for them to feel. Simply be aware. As you breathe out, imagine you are breathing out any tension from your toes, inviting them to become soft and heavy. Then, gently move your awareness to the sole of your left foot, your heel, your ankle, and slowly up your leg, bringing this same quality of gentle, non-judgmental attention to each part. Then move to the right leg, and then up through the pelvis, the abdomen, the chest, the back, the hands, the arms, the shoulders. Pay special attention to areas where we commonly hold tension: the jaw, the muscles around the eyes, the forehead. Invite them all to soften and release. This practice does two remarkable things. It pulls your mind out of the anxious loop of catastrophic thinking and anchors it in direct, physical sensation. And it systematically relaxes your entire body, creating the ideal physiological conditions for sleep. Again, the goal is not to fall asleep. The goal is to inhabit your body with a kind and gentle awareness. The sleep is a bonus. If you find that your mind is particularly agitated and lying still feels impossible, it can be wise to get out of bed for a short time. But do this mindfully, not in a fit of frustrated defeat. You can practice a slow and deliberate walking meditation in a dark or dimly lit room. Feel the sensation of the floor beneath your feet. Notice the subtle shift of weight as you lift one foot and place it down. Walk more slowly than you ever would during the day. This is a profound practice for grounding your energy and calming a restless mind. You might also sit in a comfortable chair and read a chapter of a calming book, listen to a soothing guided meditation, or simply sip a glass of water, paying full attention to every sensation. After 20 or 30 minutes of this quiet activity, you can return to bed, seeing it as a fresh opportunity for rest. Throughout this entire process, the most important shift is to change your goal from "I must fall asleep" to "I will allow myself to rest." We cannot ultimately control when sleep arrives, but we can, in every moment, control our response to being awake. We can choose to spend these hours in a state of agitated, stressful, and exhausting frustration, or we can choose to spend them in a state of quiet, calm, and restorative acceptance. An hour of tossing and turning while cursing your sleeplessness will leave you feeling drained and defeated. An hour spent in quiet, mindful breathing, even if you do not fall asleep, can be deeply restful and healing. Let go of the demand for sleep, and instead, graciously accept the gift of rest. By meeting our nighttime awakenings with this gentle, accepting presence, rather than with fear and resistance, we disarm them of their power to create suffering. We can transform these moments from a crisis into a profound opportunity for practice. These techniques of acceptance can bring great relief on any given night. But how do we move beyond simply managing these difficult moments to fundamentally changing the very habits of the mind that create them? Can these repeated acts of choosing acceptance over anxiety actually reshape our brain, making peace our new default state? The answer, from both the wisdom of the ancients and the discoveries of modern neuroscience, is a resounding yes. We now turn to exploring how we can literally build a mind that is no longer bound by anxiety. The practices we have been exploring, from the gentle acceptance of our feelings to the mindful observation of our breath, can bring profound relief in the moment. They are life rafts in the stormy seas of anxiety. But a question may linger in the skeptical mind. Are these just temporary tricks? Are we simply applying a soothing balm to a wound that will never truly heal? Can these gentle, quiet practices really change the deep-seated biological habits of a mind that has been practicing anxiety for decades? The beautiful and empowering answer, emerging from the convergence of ancient contemplative wisdom and modern neuroscience, is a resounding yes. We are not just managing our anxiety. We have the power to fundamentally reshape the very organ that produces it. We are not passive victims of our brain's wiring. We are the active and ongoing architects of our own minds. For much of modern history, the brain was thought to be a static machine. It was believed that after a certain point in early adulthood, its structure was largely fixed. But over the past few decades, scientific research has proven this to be untrue. We now understand that the brain possesses a remarkable quality known as neuroplasticity. This means that our brain is not fixed. It is constantly changing, molding, and reorganizing itself in response to our experiences, our thoughts, and our actions. Every thought we think, every emotion we feel, and every choice we make is subtly altering the physical landscape of our brain. The great spiritual traditions have known this intuitively for millennia, that through dedicated training, we can transform our own consciousness. Science is now showing us the physical mechanism for that transformation. Imagine your brain is a dense forest. When a particular event happens, say you receive some unexpected bad news, you have a choice of which path to take. If you react with immediate panic, catastrophic thinking, and a spiral of worry, you are walking down a certain path in that forest. If you have been reacting this way for many years, that path is no longer a faint trail. It is a deep, wide, well-trodden highway. The neural connections that underpin the anxiety response, involving a primitive part of our brain called the amygdala, have become incredibly strong, fast, and efficient. The path is so easy to follow that you find yourself on it automatically, without even making a conscious choice. This is why anxiety can feel so powerful and inescapable. It is not just a feeling. It is a physical, deeply ingrained structure in your brain. But here is the revolutionary truth. You do not have to keep walking down that same path. Every single time you are faced with a stressful trigger, you have an opportunity to forge a new trail. Let's say that this time, when the bad news arrives, you remember your practice. You pause. You take a single, conscious breath. You choose not to believe the first catastrophic thought. You offer yourself a moment of acceptance. In that moment, you have stepped off the anxiety highway. You are now pushing through the thick undergrowth, forging a new neural pathway. The first time you do this, it will feel difficult, unnatural, and maybe even impossible. The pull of the old, familiar highway will be immense. But you do it anyway. You choose the new response. You have created a faint new trail. The next time a stressful event occurs, you have that same choice. And if you again choose to pause, to breathe, to meet the moment with mindful acceptance, you are walking that new trail again. You are treading down the grass, breaking a few small twigs. The path becomes slightly more visible. Every time you notice your mind wandering and gently bring it back to the breath. Every time you meet a difficult emotion with the warmth of self-compassion. Every time you choose not to fire that second arrow of judgment, you are strengthening this new pathway. The scientific principle is simple and elegant. Neurons that fire together, wire together. By repeatedly associating a stressful stimulus with a calm, mindful response, you are physically strengthening the neural circuits for peace. You are building up the connections to the more evolved, rational part of your brain, the prefrontal cortex, which can regulate the primitive panic reactions of the amygdala. This is not a quick fix. You cannot create a new superhighway through a dense forest overnight. It requires patience, diligence, and most importantly, immense compassion for yourself. There will be many days when, out of sheer force of habit, you find yourself halfway down the old anxiety highway before you even realize it. This is not a failure. This is a crucial part of the process. The moment of realizing where you are is a moment of mindfulness. The practice is not to never make a mistake, but to get better at noticing, and then, without any self-criticism, to gently step off the old path and find your new trail once more. Each time you do this, you weaken the old habit and strengthen the new one. Over time, with consistent practice, your new trail becomes a clear path. It becomes a well-worn road. Eventually, it can become your new default response. Peace, which once felt so foreign and difficult to access, becomes the more natural, more familiar way to be. This profound rewiring of your own brain does not just help you sleep better. It changes the very texture of your entire life. It changes how you respond to a traffic jam, to a critical comment from your boss, to a disappointment in your relationship. You become less reactive and more responsive. You find a new sense of emotional balance and clarity. The space between a trigger and your response begins to grow, and in that space, you find your freedom. You are no longer a slave to the automatic, conditioned reactions of an anxious brain. You are building, breath by breath, choice by choice, a mind that is resilient, calm, and unbound. This realization that you are the architect of your own inner world, that you can literally sculpt your brain for peace, leads to a final, crucial insight about your place in the world. For so long, we have operated under the assumption that our happiness depends on our ability to control the world around us. But if we possess the power to so completely change our inner experience, what does that tell us about the frantic, external struggle for control? We now turn to explore the great and liberating paradox of freedom, that only by truly giving up the fight for control can we ever really find it. We have arrived at a pivotal understanding. Through the patient and compassionate practices of mindfulness and acceptance, we can literally reshape the landscape of our own brain, building new neural pathways for peace and weakening the old, habitual highways of anxiety. This power to change our inner world from the inside out reveals a fundamental truth about our lifelong quest for happiness and security. We have been looking in the wrong direction. We have been engaged in a great and exhausting external project, believing that our freedom depends on our ability to control the world around us. And now we are invited to consider a profound and liberating paradox, that true freedom is found not in achieving control, but in the courageous and intelligent act of relinquishing it. From the moment we are born, the ego begins its lifelong project of trying to manage reality. This project is rooted in the fear of a separate self living in a dangerous and unpredictable world. And so, it seeks to control everything it can. It tries to control our inner world, pushing away feelings of sadness and grasping onto fleeting moments of joy. It tries to control the outer world, manipulating people and circumstances to conform to its desires and expectations. It tries to control the past by endlessly replaying it, wishing it were different, and it tries to control the future by planning and worrying about every conceivable outcome. This vast, all-consuming project of control is the very engine of our anxiety. Anxiety is the friction, the psychic heat that is generated when our ego's demand for control collides with the uncontrollable, fluid, and unpredictable nature of life itself. The more we try to control, the more anxious we become. The great unveiling on this path is the slow and steady realization that our sense of control is largely an illusion. Take a moment to reflect on how little you truly control. You do not control the weather. You do not control the global economy or the political currents of your time. You do not, in any ultimate sense, control the people in your life. You cannot force your partner to love you, your children to obey you, or your boss to appreciate you. You can influence them, but you cannot control them. And most humbling of all, you do not even have absolute control over your own body, which ages, gets sick, and heals according to its own profound and mysterious laws, quite apart from your wishes. To see this is not to be led into a state of despair. It is to be led into a state of profound relief. It is the moment you realize that the immense burden of managing the entire universe is not, and never was, on your shoulders. You can finally put it down. When we let go of the illusion of external control, we discover where our true power has been all along. The one and only thing in the entire universe that you can ever hope to truly control is your own response to things. You cannot control the rain, but you can choose your response to a rainy day. You can see it as a gloomy nuisance or as a nourishing gift to the earth. You cannot control the rudeness of a stranger, but you can choose your response to their words. You can react with anger and defensiveness, firing a second arrow into your own heart, or you can meet it with a sense of compassionate understanding for their own likely suffering. This is the seat of our ultimate power and our ultimate freedom. It is the shift from being a helpless victim of circumstance to becoming the calm and dignified master of our own inner state. Life will always present us with a variety of conditions, but we, and we alone, have the power to choose what we make of them. There is a simple yet profound story told in Asia that perfectly illustrates this human predicament of self-imposed suffering. Hunters have devised a clever trap for monkeys. They take a coconut or a gourd, hollow it out, and drill a hole in it, just large enough for a monkey's open hand to fit through. Inside the gourd, they place a tempting prize, like a handful of rice or some sweet nuts. They then tie the gourd to a tree. Sooner or later, a monkey comes along, smells the delicious treat, and slips its open hand through the narrow hole. It grasps the prize, closing its hand into a tight fist. But now, it is trapped. The opening that was large enough for an open hand is too small for a clenched fist. The monkey screeches and pulls. It thrashes and struggles, but it cannot get free. The hunter calmly approaches. The monkey is a prisoner, not of the trap, but of its own clinging desire to be free. At any moment, all it has to do is open its hand, let go of the rice, and slip its hand out. But its craving, its attachment to the prize, is so strong that it cannot let go, and so it is captured. We are that monkey, and the trap is our own mind. The rice is whatever we are desperately clinging to, our need to be right in an argument, our rigid expectation of how life should unfold, our resentment about the past, our fear of the future, our attachment to a particular self-image. Freedom is always available to us, in every single moment. The price of that freedom is always the same: the willingness to open our hand, the willingness to let go. Our suffering is not being imposed upon us from the outside. It is the direct result of our own clenched fist, our own refusal to release our grip on our desires and our fears. Letting go of control does not mean becoming passive, apathetic, or irresponsible. It means the very opposite. It means we engage with our lives even more fully and wisely. We still take care of our health. We still work with diligence. We still love our families with all our hearts. But we do so with a new lightness. We do our part. We contribute our best effort. We act with integrity. And then we release our attachment to the result. We become like the master gardener who prepares the soil, plants the seeds, and waters the garden with care, but who ultimately surrenders the final outcome to the sun, the rain, and the mysterious forces of life itself. We become responsible for our actions, but we cease to feel responsible for the uncontrollable results of those actions. This removes the anxious, neurotic, and fearful quality from our efforts and replaces it with a sense of calm, dignified purpose. This brings us to the very heart of what true freedom is. Freedom is not getting everything you want. That is simply another form of bondage, the bondage of a desire that can never be permanently satisfied. True freedom is an inner state. It is the freedom from the compulsive need for things to be any different than they are in this moment. It is the freedom from being jerked around by the strings of our own cravings and aversions. It is the deep, quiet, and unshakable peace of an open hand, a mind that is no longer at war with reality. This profound liberation that comes from letting go of control is not a singular event, a destination at which we finally arrive. It is, instead, a continuous practice. It is an art form that we have the opportunity to cultivate and deepen for the rest of our days. We now turn to our final reflection: how to embrace acceptance, not as a project to be completed, but as a graceful and ongoing way of being in the world. Our long journey together, from the restless quiet of a sleepless night to the inner landscape of the mind and heart, has led us to this final, essential understanding. We have explored the nature of suffering and seen that its roots lie not in the world, but in our resistance to it. We have faced the truth of impermanence, unmasked the fearful machinations of the ego, and learned to apply the healing balm of acceptance to our feelings, to other people, and to our own past. We have discovered the power of presence, the freedom in releasing expectations, and the peace in embracing uncertainty. We have seen how these ancient practices can literally reshape our brain for peace. It would be tempting, now, to see this as the completion of a program, a checklist of spiritual concepts to be understood and mastered. But the final, and perhaps most important, piece of wisdom is this: acceptance is not a destination at which we finally arrive. It is a path that we learn to walk for a lifetime. It is not a skill to be acquired, but an art to be cultivated, a graceful and ongoing way of being in the world. The ego, in its endless quest for achievement, would love to master acceptance. It would love to receive a certificate of completion, declaring it officially enlightened or a peaceful person. But this is just another subtle trap of the striving mind. The path of acceptance is not a ladder that we climb to some final, static state of perfection. It is a road that unfolds before us, step by step, for the rest of our lives. The scenery will change. Our skill as a walker will improve, but the road itself is without end. To truly embrace this path is to let go of the very idea of arrival. It is to find our joy not in the prospect of a finish line, but in the texture of the road itself, in the very act of walking. This means we must be prepared for the natural ebb and flow of practice. There will be days, perhaps even weeks or months, when the practice feels easy and natural. We will feel a sense of clarity and peace. We will meet challenges with equanimity, and we will wonder how we ever lived any other way. And then, there will be days when, for no apparent reason, we find ourselves completely entangled in old habits. A wave of anxiety will feel overwhelming. We will react with anger to a small frustration. We will get lost for hours in regret or worry. The inner critic will return with a vengeance, and we will feel as though we have lost all our progress, that we are right back where we started. In these moments, it is crucial to remember that this is not a failure. This is the rhythm of the path. This is the nature of being human. The true test of our practice is not whether we ever fall down, but how we treat ourselves when we do. Can we meet our own lack of acceptance with acceptance? Can we be compassionate with our own lack of compassion? Can we forgive ourselves for our own lack of forgiveness? This is the deeper practice. It is the art of applying the teachings not just to our problems, but to our perceived failures in practice itself. In this light, every difficult moment in our life is transformed. A traffic jam is no longer just a frustrating delay. It is an opportunity to practice patience. A critical comment from another person is no longer just an insult. It is an opportunity to practice non-reactivity and to look at our own attachment to praise. A sleepless night is no longer a catastrophe. It is an opportunity to practice resting in awareness. Life itself becomes our meditation hall, and our challenges become our most profound teachers. Without these difficulties, we would have no way to strengthen the muscle of acceptance. We can even cultivate a sense of gratitude for these moments, recognizing them as the curriculum our life has designed for our own awakening. Each breath, after all, is a new chance to begin again. Each moment is a fresh opportunity to come home to the present. In the tradition of Zen Buddhism, there is a practice of drawing an enso, a circle, created with a single, fluid, expressive brushstroke. This circle is one of the most profound symbols on this path. The enso is almost never a mathematically perfect circle. It is often slightly asymmetrical. The ink may be thicker in some parts and thinner in others. There may be a splatter or a wobble. This imperfection is not seen as a mistake. It is seen as an expression of the beauty of our own unique, unrepeatable, and perfectly imperfect human lives. Furthermore, the enso circle is often left with a small gap. It is not fully closed. This opening symbolizes many things. It represents the fact that our practice, our learning, and our lives are never finished. We are always a work in progress, and this is a beautiful thing. It represents an openness to the world, a willingness to receive life as it is, rather than being a closed-off, defensive system. It points to the inherent imperfection of all manifest things and the profound wabi-sabi beauty that can be found within that imperfection. The act of drawing the enso itself is an expression of a mind that is free and present in the moment, a mind that accepts the outcome, whatever it may be. Our life is our enso, a beautiful, imperfect circle we are drawing with every breath. As we learn to walk this path, to draw our own life's enso with a spirit of acceptance, we discover a wonderful truth. Deep peace and restful sleep are not rewards waiting for us at some distant point in the future after we have finally mastered this practice. They are our constant companions on the journey itself. Every time we choose to let go of a small resentment, we feel an immediate flicker of freedom. Every time we meet our anxiety with a moment of mindful breathing, we experience a taste of peace right then and there. The reward is not separate from the practice. It is inherent within it. We walk the path of peace to find peace, and we find it in the very act of walking. The goal is not to become a perfect person, a serene statue on a pedestal. The goal is simply to continue the journey, to keep learning, to keep softening, to keep opening our hearts to the totality of our experience. This is the art of living, a lifelong process of becoming more fully, more gracefully, and more peacefully human. As we embrace this ongoing path, we find that our entire relationship to life begins to shift. Let us now gather the threads of our long journey together and reflect one last time on the profound and simple truth we have uncovered. Our journey began together in the deep quiet of a sleepless night, in that restless space where the mind wages its frantic and lonely war with life. We started with the simple, painful truth of our own anxiety. From there, we walked a long and ancient path, seeking not a battle plan, but a peace treaty. We learned to see that our suffering comes not from life's inevitable pains, but from the second arrows of our own resistance. We stood by the banks of the great river of impermanence and understood the futility of trying to stop its flow. We unmasked the ego, the fearful storyteller in our minds, and saw how its desperate need for control was the source of our bondage. Then, with courage and compassion, we turned toward the practices of healing. We learned to be the calm, accepting sky for the weather of our emotions. We learned to offer the warmth of loving kindness to our own imperfect hearts and to see the humanity in others. We found the freedom in letting go of the past, of our expectations, and of our illusion of control. We discovered that our true home is always here, in the simple, breathing reality of the present moment. We learned that we are not victims of our own minds, but the architects of our own peace. This has been our journey, from the turmoil of resistance to the quiet strength of acceptance. The final truth we arrive at is as simple as it is profound. Peace is not the absence of storms. It is not a life free from difficulty, loss, or uncertainty. Peace is the ability to keep your heart quiet in the middle of the storm. It is not an external destination you must travel to, but an internal space you can learn to cultivate, a sanctuary you can build within yourself, breath by breath. The restful sleep you seek will not come from a world that finally conforms to your wishes, but from a mind that has learned to gracefully accept a world that never will. Tonight, as you lay your head down to rest, remember that you do not need to win the war in your mind. You only need to choose not to fight. Let the thoughts, the worries, the plans come and go like clouds in the vast night sky. Feel the gentle anchor of your breath, rising and falling. The power to sleep peacefully and to live peacefully lies not in changing the world, but in changing your relationship to it. That peace is not something you need to find, or achieve, or earn. It is already here, inside you, waiting for you to come home.